Buenas and half a day, the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor, Procurement, Statistics, Research, and Planning is calling this virtual public hearing to order. It is now 9:02 a.m., Thursday, May 6, 2021. Notice of today's virtual hearing was provided via email to senators, stakeholders, local media on April 29th and May 4th, thus meeting the requirements of open government law. I'd like to acknowledge the senators that have joined me here today. Speaker Therese Terlaje, Senator Tony Ada.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning. Senator Jim Moylan and Senator Chris Dueñas. Suzu's Masi colleagues. The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony on the first item is the executive appointment of Ms. Corazon Montellano to serve as a member of the Guam Solid Waste Authority Board of Directors. The second item is to hear testimony on Bill number 104-36 COR, sponsored by myself and co-sponsored by Speaker Therese Terlaje, Senators Tony Ada, Senator Joanne Brown, Chris Dueñas, Selena Nelson, and Telo Taitague. It's an act to amend section 6703, 6802, and 6805, all of Chapter 6, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, relative to payment requirements for cigarette tax stamps. The last item is to hear testimony on Bill number 116-36 COR, sponsored by myself and co-sponsored by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Jose Pedo Terlaje, Senator Jim Moylan, Senator Telo Taitague, and Senator Tony Ada. It's an act to amend section 51202A, 51204, and 51207A, all of Chapter 51, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, to amend section 40115C of Chapter 40, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, and to amend section 77114.3 of Chapter 77, Title 21, Guam Code Annotated, relative to enhancing agencies' capacity to address illegal dumping. And so now to begin our agenda, but first of all, the rules of conduct for this virtual hearing are as follows. The host of this hearing will mute all participants until called upon by the chair. Virtual backgrounds should not be utilized. So for those that have virtual backgrounds, I appreciate if you can convert to the regular background during the hearing, and participants' face must be visible at all times. When called to speak, please ensure that you are unmuted and that you're speaking into your microphone. Members of the committee wishing to speak may indicate their desire to the chair through the in-app chat feature. The order of questioning will begin with chairperson and the vice chairperson, followed by senators, and each senator will be allowed to pose questions to the agency. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inferences as to the character motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from public hearing by the host. And now to begin our agenda. Our first item is to hear testimony on the executive appointment of Ms. Corazon Montellano to serve as a member of the Guam Solid Waste Board of Directors. Guam Solid Waste Authority Board of Directors functions as follows. Their powers are vested to include the following. They administer those powers listed in Chapter 51A, Title 10 of Guam Code Annotated. They acquire and hold and use any real property necessary for carrying out any of the powers exercised by the board in Chapter 51A, Title 10. They establish its internal organization and management and adopt regulations for the administration of its operations. They establish and modify, with approval of the PUC, reasonable rates and charges for the collection, transportation, disposal, storage, recycling, and processing of solid waste to recover the full cost of providing solid waste management services and collect money from customers using these services. They enter into contracts and execute all instruments necessary or convenient in the exercise of its powers to adopt a seal and sue or be sued in its own corporate name. They incur indebtedness pursuant to Article 2, Chapter 51A. They enter into contracts with the government of Guam or with the United States, or loans or grants. They adopt rules and regulations as may be necessary. They control, operate, improve, equip, maintain, repair, renew, replace, reconstruct, alter, and ensure that the solid waste management system is compliant with any applicable zoning, building, environmental, and health regulations on Guam. They can enter into public-private partnerships for solid waste management facilities. They organize, plan, secure, and manage resources and promote the implementation of the solid waste management plan. They evaluate, promote capital improvement projects, maintenance programs, and they require the preparation of any necessary environmental impact assessments or environmental impact reports and plans for any mitigation. So these are just some of the powers of the board. And as we all know, this is a very vital utility for our island, ensuring the safety and health of our land and our people. So the notice was sent to Guam Solid Waste Authority, the chairperson, as well as the board of directors, and the agency itself. We have received testimonies, and some of them are here today to provide oral testimony. So I believe we have everyone here that is going to provide. I believe Joey Dueñas also provided some written testimony, and I believe others are here to present personally. So I would like to now call up those that are here to testify, first for the nominee, and then we'll hear testimony from the nominee herself. And so we have, first of all, signed up is, I'd like to recognize Attorney Fred Harecki for his testimony.
Good morning, Chairwoman Perez. Can you hear me okay? Okay. And good morning to the other senators present, Senator Ada, Speaker Terlaje, Senator Moylan, and Senator Dueñas. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ms. Cora Montelano for over 27 years, and I've had extensive opportunity to work with her in various capacities that I've had, both representing the Guam Power Authority and with the Public Utilities Commission. And I think what makes Ms. Montellano such an excellent appointee to the Solid Waste Board is her background and knowledge about utility finance. She served for 30 years as the Assistant Chief Financial Officer at the Guam Power Authority. And in that position, she has gained a tremendous amount of knowledge about how a utility operates, its finances, its record keeping, its bonds, how it establishes itself as a strong and economically viable utility. So the point being that she has had such good experience on utilities. And although GPA is a different utility than solid waste, many of the accounting functions, financial aspects, record keeping, et cetera, are the same between the utilities. I couldn't think of anyone on Guam that knows as much about finances and accounting for a utility as Ms. Montellano. And I think all the skills that she has gained and learned over her many years of experience will enable her to a great extent to be able to provide advice to the Solid Waste Board, to advise this young utility on how to strengthen itself financially. And she, perhaps more than almost anyone else, can provide that kind of financial background and assistance in guiding the Solid Waste Authority through its future. As to her background and personality, honestly, you couldn't meet a more honest, straightforward person than Cora. And I dealt with her extensively, both when I was legal counsel for GPA and on the Public Utilities Commission. As an example, on the Utilities Commission, Cora and I would work every 6 months on a levelized energy adjustment clause. Cora is responsible for providing correct, factual, honest information. And she always did that. It just really impressed me that she would never try to misrepresent anything, the conditions of the fuel market, for example, even though it might not help the utility. So my point is, you can always count on her to provide honest, straightforward information. And I'm really certain that she will do that with the Solid Waste Authority. She's an individual of the highest integrity and honesty. I think that Those from GPA that will evaluate her will tell you she had a stellar career at GPA and will long be remembered for the work that she did there. She will be a great addition to the Solid Waste Board. She's diligent and hardworking. And I would urge the senators to definitely confirm her to the director position at Solid Waste. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney Harecki, for your testimony. Yes, it speaks volumes, especially since you've known her over the 27 years as a PUC administrative law judge and overseeing a utility. So that speaks volumes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would now like to recognize CCU member Simon Sanchez.
Masi, Senator, and Buenas Senators, and Madam Speaker, and thank you for allowing us to testify, and thank you to Attorney Fred Harecki for providing my testimony, because everything Fred said is everything I'm going to say. In fact, I was going down the list, Fred, I said, doggone it, I was going to say that, but I've known Cora for the 17 years I've been on the CCU, and I knew Cora when she was at FHP, so she had private sector experience. She is one of the most capable and competent professionals I've ever had to work with in the public and private sector. She understands how public utilities work. She would do the LEAC every 6 months. And the running joke was when Joey and I and John were trying to figure it out, we'd look at Cora and say, is it going up? Is it going down? 3.9%, 2.4%? And she would always correct us. Then we'd go see Fred. And Jesse, even though we're testifying, we'd glance back at Cora. Are we saying the right number? Because you could always count on Cora to understand this. And Cora's greatest attribute to me is her ability to understand problems and accounting and financing, not only for power, but she helped us at water. She just has an understanding of how you must look at a public utility, how it works, how you set up rates, how you design rates, and how rates generate the desired revenues of a utility that is before the PUC and before the public. She understands the GPA, the utility side of how to file a rate case. She understands what the PUC is going to be looking for in filing a rate case. She understands bond financing and using other types of instruments for financing. She knows how to create financial statements, and of course she'll be on the board, so she won't be creating them, but she understands how to read them and how to link financial statements to operations. And she will quickly understand, if she doesn't already, understand the issues facing GSWA, because they're very similar to what power and water had to go through. I mean, GWA was very much like GSWA is now, back in the late 90s. And when the CCU was created, we first took over. We were on the brink of receivership. GSWA just came out of receivership. We avoided receivership because we made good decisions on behalf of ratepayers. And Cora was very instrumental and understands exactly how you have to think about that in order to get board acceptance and public acceptance. And finally, I think to speak to what Fred was alluding to, she has the right temperament. When the rest of us are getting excited, she gets calmer, and she can sift through and doesn't get frazzled when there are challenging issues. If she unretired, we'd hire her back immediately. We really miss her there, but she also trained her team. Her team that works with her are more than capable and are taking advantage of what she shared with them, which just tells you what a great professional she is and what a great person. I was so happy to hear that she was nominated. I spoke with Chairman Gale yesterday. I said, you're going to get a winner. And I think that's what you're going to hear from the rest of the testimony. And I really believe it's an excellent choice for the governor and an excellent choice for you, senators, to support her nomination. And I hope you please confirm her. She will help GSWA and she will serve our community well.
Great. Thank you so much, CCU member Sanchez. Thank you so much. I would like to also recognize, we have in our presence Congressman Nicholas, who's here today. Thank you for being here. We also have Senator Joanne Brown and Senator Telo Taitague, Masi. All right, so the next who signed up to testify is Cazette Villena Sisi. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but you are recognized if you would like to provide any testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, very, very clearly.
Thank you so much. Unlike attorney, the previous ones that gave testimony, I know Miss Cara Montellano on a personal level. I've known her since long time ago. I mean, I mentioned in my testimonies that I've known her more than half of my lifetime. She became the sister that I never had when I came here in Guam. Um, she's practically full of wisdom and knowledge. That's why I always reach out to her on practically anything in life, from gardening, from cooking, from since my background is actually in construction, you would be surprised that she can also give sound advice on construction works. Ate Cora, as we fondly call, is a very selfless person. She would think about others before herself. Even though she's retired, she busies herself with a lot of pro bono work, helping family and friends on accounting works and gardening, and even taking care of her senior relatives. Ate Cora actually lives up to her name, Corazon. She serves not only with passion, but with a heart. GSWA would be very lucky to have her as a board of directors, since she would surely protect the interests of the environment and the future generation. And it's a great opportunity for me to express my support for Miss Cora, and surely I would really hope that the government would and the board will confirm her. And just to give you a background, I'm Cosette Villena Sese, and I work for Joint Region Marianas. Over.
Thank you so much, Cosette, for being here this morning, providing testimony. We really appreciate that. The next person we have signed up is Rando Wiegand to testify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate this opportunity. Again, I kind of agree with Simon. I felt like Fred took most of my speech, and then Simon took the rest of it. So I'd like to add just a couple things. I met Cora in 1991. I audited her. She was it was a great audit. She had all the answers, everything, she had everything organized, everything lined up. That was when she was with FHP, and then she went over to GPA, and I audited her there also, and then I joined her at GPA for many years also. And yeah, just like what everyone was saying, she really has the full breadth of the accounting and finance function. She many years ago, she had an opportunity, and she learned about it like 7 or 10 days in advance, that she could take the certified government financial manager exam in 7 or 10 days or whatever it was. And she was traveling at the time, and so there's really no time to prepare. So she took the exam pretty much cold, and then passed everything. And that just demonstrates that she just possesses the full range of all government financial issues. As everyone was saying, the ethics, the character, it's just top notch. That she, if things are not right, she gets very, very uncomfortable, and has to correct it and make things right. And yeah, she's the kind of person who we need in government. And yeah, I can't recommend her strongly enough for this position. I think she's perfectly suited with her utility background to work at really what's another utility, which is Guam Solid Waste Authority. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wiegand, for your testimony, and for corroborating everybody's testimony here today as well. So since we do not have anyone else signed up to testify on behalf of Ms. Montelano, we would like to now recognize the nominee herself to provide any words or testimony. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Perez, and good morning to the rest of the senators. Sorry, all my phones are ringing right now. My name is Corazon Montellano, and I'm a retiree from the Guam Power Authority since December 2019. I was the Assistant Chief Financial Officer there for 28 years, and I'm truly honored that I was nominated by the Governor to be a member of the Board of Directors for the Guam Solid Waste Authority. I've always wanted to be in public service, and as everyone has said, my background is in finance and almost 30 years in the utility industry. And I'm hoping to make really a vital contribution to the success of the authority and to ensure that its ratepayers pay for fair, prudent, and reasonable fees. And my experience in cost of service studies and rate designs will give me better perspective, both from the agency and ratepayers' point of view. I'll strive to do my best and work diligently with the members of the board and management of GSWA. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank the people who testify in support of my nomination. I've known them for many, many years, and I have a lot of respect for all of them. Thank you very much. And I look forward to your favorable approval for my nomination, and any questions you may have, senators, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Montellano, and I'm very pleased that you decided not to retire and continue your dedication to helping our utilities, and especially one that's a fledgling one coming out of receivership. And I'm just so happy that we, with your financial expertise, that is so much needed now to ensure financial security of this utility. And yeah, I think you'll make a great compliment to everybody else on that board. That board has quite a good group there. And you add another layer of expertise that's needed. So thank you so much for accepting the nomination. I know when I first spoke with you the other day, it was very clear that your financial understanding is there, and you've already done some of the work in looking at the financials
Yeah.
of Guam Solid Waste Authority. And so as far as conflict of interest, do you have any conflict of interest?
No, right now I don't have. Like I've told you in our first meeting, after I retire, I just took a license for accounting and bookkeeping services. So I only service few construction companies. These are small organizations that I don't believe they do business at GSWA.
Okay.
So I don't think I have any conflict there.
Okay. Definitely appreciate that. I don't have any other questions, but I would like to now open the floor to my colleagues, and thank you again. So Speaker Terlaje, do you have any questions for the nominee?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I want to thank you, Ms. Montellano, for being willing to volunteer to do this. I know
Thank you.
retired from an excellent career, and but this is a voluntary work. So I really do appreciate that, especially with the accolades that have come in through testimony. And these are people whose praise for you I really take seriously because of their experience as well. And so they've talked about, your ethics. That's very important. Your character, your accounting skills, your professionalism in general, your ability to grasp the big picture when it comes to utilities and the impacts to ratepayers. And I was surprised to hear even that you would be, protecting our environment, all of that in one package. We are very lucky as a government to have your continued service. So I want to commend you on your career, and I want to thank you for being willing to do this. So this agency is tasked with, operating, and they're already saying that they need to raise rates. We are pushing back on that and saying, no, the whole deal with the rates that were set by the predecessor that, in front of the district court was that, these would be sustainable. They would be able to, that we would not have to raise rates. And so, yeah, I'm just hoping that we can find a way And I know it's very challenging to do everything that we want to do. I was teasing the oversight chair that with your capabilities, perhaps you should apply to be the administrator instead of one of the directors, because I know that agency is in, I don't know, we were talking about it the other day, but thank you again.
Thank you, Speaker Terlaje. I'll do my best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker Terlaje. Next, I'd like to recognize Minority Leader Chris Dueñas.
Madam Chair and Ms. Corazon, Montellano. I have to echo the speaker's remarks. You had the who's who in the industry of professionals to testify on your behalf, as well as I don't know if the current qualifications you have, but I would amend the bill once again, the law that we just amended for you to perhaps be the general manager. But we know that you're going to most definitely bring just a wealth of experience and knowledge, and we look forward to your service. And you can certainly count on my vote immediately and in the affirmative for your nomination. God bless you for your community service as well. That your friend has spoken to us about, and all of the things that you do outside of just your career. Corazon. So once again, Madam Chair, what a great hearing. I've seen a lot of qualified candidates come before for confirmation, but this is one of the more stellar representatives.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Senator Tony Ada, you have any
Thank you,
comment?
Madam Chair. Good morning, ma'am, and thank you for your service, continued service to our island, and for answering the governor's call. I think perhaps the questions that I have is, being that the solid waste can go into public-private partnerships, and being that just maybe, 2 weeks ago, we had Earth Day, and that 17 tons of trash was collected around the island and processed and sent forward. And just immediately right after that day, up north, they had, a dumping again. People were illegally dumping again. Would you be open perhaps to maybe looking at what we can do up north to protect our waterlands? Perhaps having a public-private partnership with a roll-on, roll-off bin at maybe 2-3 areas up north where people can come to, dump their trash instead of trying to drive down to the transfer station in Tumon. And things that we can do to be proactive, because we're going to pay for it one way or the other. Either we're going to pay for it in the beginning, we're going to pay for it in the end. And when we pay for it in the end, we just not only pay for the trash, but the possible contamination to our waterlands, right?
Right.
So would you be open to public-private partnerships and providing roll-on, roll-off bins, perhaps 3 days a week up north to help with this issue?
Yes, thank you for that, Senator. Actually, I started reading also the management audit on GSWA that was done by the Public Utility Commission. And like you said, really, there's a lot of illegal dumping really around the island. And like you said, especially in the north. And a public-private partnership is really a good idea. And that's what we've done also at Guam Power Authority, a public-private partnership on our generating plants. So I think that I am amenable to that.
I'm glad, and
That would really help us a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And the issue with people dumping is one of two things, right? Either they don't have the money for the monthly bin, or they don't have the means to drive down to Tumon, right?
Right. Yes.
So we can bring the roll-on, roll-off bins to them, and you don't have to drive a start, and perhaps then they'd be able to, pay $6 a truckload, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, whatever it may be. Yeah, just to avoid this illegal dumping. And really, I mean, we have a beautiful island, and I really, feel so sad every time I see people. I mean, not really people, but those other areas where there's a lot of illegal dumping going on. And it's really very unfortunate.
So my other question is, and not to put you on the spot or anything, being that the governor did appoint you, but what is your thoughts on the mandatory trash bins to every individual that or every household. What's your thoughts on that?
I know. I was reading that. I'm not finished reading the like I said, the management audit, and that's one of the I guess it's the mandatory versus the non-mandatory trash collection from the residential customers, and it looks like we're only have around, I think, 50% of our residential that are paying for that $30 a month, because I myself is paying for it, and the other half of our residential customers are not paying. I think we also mandatory. I think I'll go for that, knowing that there's a lot of illegal dumping going around. But then again, we need to do some cost of service really, and try not to charge that huge. I mean, $30 is a lot of money for a lot of people, especially the low income people. So I don't think they can afford that. And I also have read in that report the benchmarking of the fees that are being charged in the U.S. mainland versus here on island. It looks like it's between, I can't remember the amount, I think it's between $13 to $16 versus our $30. So it's half. So, I mean, maybe if we can charge a minimum amount for low income households, like just like what we do at Guam Power and Guam Waterworks. You notice there's a lifeline rate that is being charged for the, I mean, the first 500 kilowatt hour or the first 5,000 gallon of water is at a very low rate.
So I'm glad you got insight into that, where you've been on that side now, and being at solid waste, perhaps you can bring that balance and hopefully make up the shortfalls of the solid waste authority, but yet not on the backs of the people again. So I appreciate that, man. Yeah, and I look forward to your confirmation hearing, and you have my support and my vote for your confirmation. Madam Chair, that's the only questions I have. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Ada. Senator Jim Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations on your nomination. Ma'am, you obviously have really strong community support, and the testimony was all in favor, and I'm happy for you on that, and I thank you for your volunteering as well. This responsibility, of course, now is large. The department has some bills to get through. That's going to be tough, and then our island is littered with unsightly trash, and a few of our senators here, Chris and Senator Tony, also we took a tour of down in Tumon, our tourist capital there, right? And it was littered with trash and on private property too. So I'm hoping for great things coming from you and your enthusiasm to get things done. We need a plan of action. And we're hoping with your expertise and your other board members that you can come up with something that you can tell us this is needed. And then we can help support you on that. We have federal funds coming in, over $600 million, and possibly this could be something that the agency could use and that could be used. So I'm hoping with that plan that you also say this is what we could use. So I congratulate you once again, and I'm looking forward to great things there. You do have my support. Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Joanne Brown, if you have any comments or questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and certainly appreciative of Mrs. Montellano's interest in wanting to serve on the Guam Solid Waste Board. I think all the testimony that was provided from certainly some very important people in our community that have had the opportunity to work with her, say a lot. It's not every day you have the opportunity to have people that know and have worked with you be able to come forth publicly and express their position with regards to the professional work that you've done over the years, and have such good and favorable things to say. So I don't doubt Mrs. Montellano would be a good fit for the Guam Solid Waste Authority. Of course, we know there's a number of challenges ahead for them with regards to their revenue and the ongoing management of the landfill. And of course, just dealing with the issues of the finances and how they're going to address the shortfall that they're experiencing this year as a result of the pandemic and the impact it's had to visitor industry and all those support businesses that otherwise would be generating the waste stream that the Guam Solid Waste Authority was banking on those revenues. So I don't have any questions for her. I certainly want to congratulate her and express my appreciation for her willing to step up and serve our community. So thank you very much. You also have my support. I wish every hearing we was as enjoyable, especially to hear such good things about someone in our community. So congratulations to you, and we wish you well on your new endeavor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Taitague.
Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone who's here testifying and my colleagues. And definitely to you, Corazon, thank you so much, for again contributing to our community to make it a safe and friendly environment for all the people on Guam. And I know you're going to do such a great job. And if you've got, strong people here supporting you, that says so much about who you are, especially those who've had the opportunity to work with you. There are a lot of challenges that we have at solid waste right now, considering the revenue not coming in. We also have the issue with the recycling bins, that it was given free to customers, and now there may be a cost to that. There are a lot of issues I'm sure you're aware of, and I just wanted to get your take on something that was in the news about mandating every household to have, if you have water and power, that it's automatic that you have trash that you have to pay for as well. So it comes hand in hand. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I know that right now the trash collection is non-mandatory. And I think the recommendation is to have a mandatory trash collection so everybody would pay for it. And again, to avoid this illegal dumping around the island. So, and at the same time, if we do that, that would at least raise the revenue for Guam Solid Waste. But then again, we have to think of, like I said earlier, it's $30 a month for every household. And we have, I'm not sure what the demographic is, but I'm sure we have a lot of low-income households that cannot afford to pay for this $30. So yes, I am for mandatory, but we need to look at, again, the cost of service and rate design for all our household customers.
Right, or maybe even look into subsidizing, those.
Subsidizing, yes.
Yeah, subsidizing. So I'm very anxious to see you get your hands, into this and to find a great solution. I'm very confident on your position that you're able to take this position and will do an excellent job. So I wish you the very best. And please know that my office is always open if you have any concerns or you would like to share anything or anything I can do to make your life easier too as well, because I work for you so as well. So please take care, and thank you again so much for stepping up to the plate. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Taitague.
Thank you, Senator Taitague. And again, I want to thank Ms. Montelano for accepting the nomination to serve on the Guam Solid Waste Authority Board with your expertise with GPA over those years. I think it definitely brings a lot of institutional knowledge on how to support Guam Solid Waste Authority. So I share the sentiments of my colleagues here that I am supportive of your nomination and would definitely move forward with it in the upcoming session. So thank you for taking this time and your dedication to helping our island. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
So the time is 9:41. The confirmation hearing for Ms. Corazon Montellano is now duly heard. So I want to thank everyone here who has come here today to provide testimony. And so now we are going to move on to the next item of the agenda, which is to hear testimony for bill number 104-36. It's a bill sponsored by myself and co-sponsored by Speaker Therese Terlaje, Senator Tony Atta, Senator Joanne Brown, Chris Dueñas, TelenaCruz Nelson, and Telo Taitague. It's an act to amend section 6703, 6802, and 6805, all of chapter 6 of title 11, Guam Code Annotated, relative to payment requirements for cigarette tax stamps. So there was a fiscal note waiver that we received per BBMR. The Bureau doesn't anticipate an increased reduction to revenues anticipated in the form of a cigarette tax stamp. The Bureau notes that this legislation may improve the timeliness of deposits into the Healthy Futures Fund and the newly created cigarette stamp tax fund, which may improve both funds' cash flow. So we did send notices to Department of Revenue and Taxation, Office of Attorney General, Department of Public Health, and Guam Behavioral Health as well. We did receive testimony from the American Cancer Society Network. It is in support of a cigarette tax being properly implemented and enforced in order to see public health benefit. However, we feel the legislature should not be providing any financial assistance for doing so. So I would also provide some introduction remarks. So Bill 104-36 seeks to amend the Cigarette Stamp Tax Act in preparation of its implementation. The measure refines Public Law 34-55, ensuring all taxes due are paid at the time of purchase of stamps, and implements a future funding source for the public law. Bill 104-36 would do four things. It eliminates one of two delays inhibiting cigarette tax payments currently afforded to the tobacco wholesalers by requiring the payment of cigarette stamps at the time of purchase. Delays in payments may be made subject to the approval of the Department of Revenue and Taxation and to be backed by a surety bond in the amount of the payment. It eliminates the 0.4% discount on stamps afforded to wholesalers after 2 years, and it charges a fee for the stamps. With millions in unreported unpaid taxes noted by the Office of the Public Auditor, the current cigarette stamp tax law allows for a continuity of tax deferment. Currently, wholesalers are afforded the opportunity to place their tobacco products that arrive at the seaport into a bonded warehouse, which delays the taxation of the products. Then another delay occurs as payment for the stamps purchase are allowed to be paid in the following month. Bill 104 would empower Department of Revenue and Taxation to collect taxes due when stamps are purchased and allow for DRT staff to more efficiently oversee withdrawals from bonded warehouses. Bill 104 creates a process where an additional delay would be allowed, but with requirements for wholesalers subject to the director's approval. Bill 104 implements a 2-year sunset provision of the 0.4% discount to allow for wholesalers to adapt and implement this new process to their operations without compromising revenues to the Healthy Futures Fund in perpetuity. Lastly, the imposition of a fee when purchasing the stamps would ensure the continuity of the funding for DRT and the Office of the Attorney General to carry out the mandates of Public Law 34-55. Since the passing of Public Law 34-55, the cigarette stamp tax program has not been implemented. Time and time again, DRT's justification for the lack of implementation is funding. The legislative body put forth a mandate with no source of revenues to fund it. The 35th Guam Legislature passed Public Law 35-129 last year, requiring DRT to issue out an RFP for the enforcement of tobacco taxes. With Public Law 35-129, the private party has an earning potential of up to 12% of tobacco taxes collected in excess of the average monthly excise tax collected over the last 3 fiscal years. To put this plainly, if this private party were to collect $3 million more a month than prior fiscal years, they would be entitled to collect roughly $4.3 million annually. And these are funds that could have gone directly into the Healthy Futures Fund. With the implementation of the 1% fee on stamps purchase, conservative estimates would bring in about $460,000 annually to carry out Public Law 34-55. The imposition of a processing fee is not a new concept, but rather it's practiced in Hawaii, where they charge 1.7% of the denominated value of each stamp sold. So this is an important measure with the potential to more sufficiently fund vital public services, and I look forward to receiving your testimonies today. To begin with, I would like to recognize the Deputy Director Frank Leon Guerrero from Department of Revenue and Taxation for his testimony.
Morning, Senator Sabina, Senator Perez, and senators of the 36 Guam legislature and Congressman San Nicolas. This morning, I'd like to present the position of the Guam Department of Revenue and Taxation. Okay, so regarding regarding the bill, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 104-36, which is an act to amend subsections 6703, 6802, and 6805, all of Chapter 6, Title 11 of the Guam Code Annotated, relative to the payment requirements for cigarette tax stamps. Despite the well-meaning intentions behind 104, the Department of Revenue and Taxation respectfully opposes the legislation. The department, through the Office of the Attorney General, is preparing to secure the IFB for the tax stamps and is about to issue a request for proposal to execute the current stamp tax law. We have made much progress towards building up our capacity by meeting with different stakeholders, such as the Office of the Attorney General and others, to implement this mandate. The changes to the law that are proposed in this legislation will set the department back and derail the work that we have accomplished so far. We appreciate the intention of Bill 104, and the department will be more than happy to work with the committee on future legislation to help us meet our mandates. Jesus Moss is.
All right, thank you so much, Frank Biancarao. So I know you have to leave at fairly soon, but I would like to actually, before you leave, I would like to basically ask questions and allow my colleagues to ask questions as well. So,
Okay. Yes.
So in the previous term, there was mention about the cost of doing it in-house versus the cost of using a third party. So are you aware of the difference of the cost of implementation of the cigarette stamp tax between the two options?
There are going to be differences, and one of the things on these things, and we're looking at with the Office of the Attorney General, we're looking at the little technical stuff that we're trying to avoid any other future confrontation. And if you can see already, the director who has recused herself from this cigarette stamp issue has already been sued by a private entity. So I think we're proceeding very cautiously and looking at the wordings, the language, and the stamps. And as I mentioned, we're doing two different things here, and that's actually procuring the stamp. And we want to make sure that our investment in the stamp, as we procure the stamp, that the parties that are going to be doing the enforcement and make sure that they all work together. We don't want to waste procure the stamps and put that to waste if the language of the other proposed legislation becomes in conflict. It's just being cautious.
Okay, so about the question was the cost. Do you know the difference?
Yes. I don't know the specific. Yeah, I don't know the exact specifics of the difference of the cost. No, I don't.
Yeah. So last term, the testimony that was provided, there was an estimate about as little as 300,000 to do it in-house, and with the private party, it could be up to 12 million. So it's definitely more feasible to do it in-house. This particular bill does not, it still allows the IFB. So it still allows an IFB for, stamps. So there still needs to be that procurement that occurs. So it doesn't conflict with that law, that law that was passed last term. The DRT can still implement the stamps. The part that this bill, it does provide an alternative to that public law, which is doing it in-house. That one is the private party, and this one is to do it in-house at a more feasible cost. And the money that doesn't go to pay this third party can go into the agencies that are public health agencies that are in need of this to support, the public health of our people. So that's the difference. The money that is going to be collected, additional funds can go towards the public health entities. So can you explain why the change? Why is there a change in testimony from last term?
Testimony. What testimony are you referring to?
So yeah, the position of DRT was that they preferred to do it in-house, and I just wanted to know what caused the change in the position of DRT.
I think we were weighing the advantages and disadvantages. Of course, I agree with the assessment, your assessment, the assessment overall. It just, I think our position at this point, at this venture, is just that we haven't allowed all of the work that we've been working on to actually get in motion. We've, from the time that we were mandated to implement the stamp thing, we've been just putting a lot of work into it and a lot of resources into it. So, and we haven't, I guess, put it in motion. So at this point, so we'd just like to keep our current status.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Director. I'd like to open the floor to my colleagues for any questions. I know you have to leave, so I just want to give them this opportunity. Speaker Terlaje, if you have any questions for Deputy Director.
Well, if I could first ask, I really need your testimony throughout this hearing, and want to know if, is there a way you can rearrange your other commitments so that you can stay at the hearing? Because the director is obviously not available. She's saying she's conflicted out of this, and so you're the only one at Rev and Tax who we've been, delegated to work with. Is it possible?
I'm sorry, can you restart?
I'm just asking if you're able to stay for the rest of the hearing, so that after we hear the other testimony, we can also ask questions. That's one.
Okay.
My other question, so when Reverend Tax says they are against this, most of the bill talks about payment and the timing of the payment. And so I wanted to know, so Department of Revenue and Taxation is opposed to changing the time of payment for the stamps?
Are we opposed to changing the time of the payment on the stamps?
Yes.
I don't believe we're opposed to the changes. We're asking for our position to let us finish our current process with the existing the first direction, and we haven't even implemented that one. We've worked so hard to get to this point, where along with the Office of the Attorney General and the other parts of the IFB is done at GSA, and where everything is pretty much set in motion, and we're just asking for time.
Well, why don't you tell us the status of your IFB?
I'm sorry.
Could you tell us the status of your IFB?
The IFB is now at GSA. There was a little delay on it, and it was a cost factor. That cost for the IFB was in several $1,000s, and we were short, so we were able to secure the balance of it. So that's now in motion, and it's down at the GSA.
What do you mean the cost? Did you pay somebody to write the IFB?
May I defer to the Office or Attorney General? Is that Fred?
Yes. Hi, good morning. Good morning, senators. Yes, Deputy Director Fred is here. For the record, before we speak, I am Deputy Attorney General Stephanie Mendiola, General Counsel for the AG's office. And I'm here with our Chief of Staff, Deputy Director of our Consumer Protection Division, Fred Nishihira. We certainly wanted to let Deputy Director Leongaro finish, but to clarify, the IFB is with GSA. It's pending publication. For questions about the compilation, we're happy to answer. The cost for the tobacco stamps for the initial purchase was around $60,000. And to help move this process along, our office agreed to cover the cost on behalf of revenue and tax. But as the administering agency, we worked with them to develop the specs to put the IFB together.
So what's the deputy director referring to when he says the costs caused a delay?
I'm not sure.
It may be with the fact that we use split funding at our office. That did cause just a slight bit of delay, but there's no cost. In other words, we did all the specs in-house, working between Rev and Tax and our office. We were able to get it out.
Yes, and the cost was also this. Even though there's a split in the cost, it's all within our office.
Correct.
Now, when you're saying cost, you're talking about now how we're going to pay for the stamps, the stamp itself. And you had offered that since last year or whenever we heard that the underlying bill, right? That you had already offered that $60,000, and that you would put, assist with that. So, yeah, all right. So the IFB, I don't know, Madam Chair, how you would like to proceed. I'm trying to, I would like to get back to the Deputy Director then and ask if Revenue and Taxation opposes the change in payment date of, when you're going to pay for your stamps, whether you're going to pay for it on purchase or you're going to pay for it on, under the current law, which is, I think, 20 days in the following month, by the 20th day of the following month. Is that what I want to find out, I guess, the basis of the Department of Revenue and Taxation's opposition to that.
The opposition is in general and not in the specific details of the changes. So we just, if anything, it's just we would like to move forward with our existing movement on the current stamp process.
All right, then could you describe the IFB? I don't know, Madam Chair, if you provided a copy. I haven't seen one. So is it just beginning with the GSA and then it's going to go to the Attorney General's office and then to the governor? Is that the process that we should expect? Or what will happen after GSA?
Deputy Director, I can answer that. So yes, we actually anticipate, given our authority for GSA refer back to us. Once we get the IFB number, we will process the IFB with the help of GSA. We will then award, and then this one will be purchase order, so it won't even have to go to the governor.
All right. So what is the IFB calling for? Is it calling for a private contractor to do the regulation of the stamps?
No, it's strictly stamps.
It's just you're purchasing stamps. What about the machine?
No, the machine is, well, it depends, I guess, on how the RFP works, if and when that goes out. But at this point, it's just strictly the stamps. We are working with draft regulations, and that would put the onus on the vendors to put it on their product. So that would not be a government of Guam responsibility.
All right, so what is the RFP status?
We are still working with DRT on that one. I think they are fine tuning it as well, say. Deputy can answer that one.
After the IFB is fulfilled and they purchase stamps, are you able to apply the stamp tax law without finishing the RFP?
So the way the IFB is, because we're not done with the RFP, the way the IFB is designed is once the IFB is awarded, the vendor has to lock in a price to either the government of Guam or DRT's designee. So the vendor, the winning vendor of a RFP would know the cost of the stamp and they would just incorporate it into their price.
All right, does the IFB prohibit the portions of this bill that would change the date that the stamp taxes are paid?
No, the IFB addresses only the purchase of stamps. If it might help to put this all in a little bit more context, going back about a year or so, well, obviously this program was established several years ago and there had been no movement. Going back about a year or so ago, when our office had stepped in and committed to helping Rev and Tax push this program forward, the first step was purchasing the stamps, because we couldn't move forward with anything if we didn't have the stamps. So the effort started with our office and Rev and Tax to purchase the stamps. Of course, discussion about the rules and regulations tied into that, what have you. Recently, with the passage of the public law mandating the RFP, we had to adjust the discussions to figure out how we could still achieve both goals, where we wouldn't waste the efforts that we were making toward purchasing the stamps through the IFB process. But if the agency did decide to move forward with the RFP and then further decided to award under the RFP, would the vendor then be able to use the stamps that the government had already purchased? And so after the passage of the law that would mandated the RFP, it took us back to the drawing board a little bit. But to be clear, the IFB process was limited to the purchase of the stamped product itself. It doesn't touch on anything else. And what we are hoping that the RFP will address is that the proposal by any offeror would incorporate the use of the stamps that the government would then already have in stock.
So they would not be usable prior to completion of the RFP?
I suppose that answer depends on what Rev and Tax decides to do, because the public law that mandated the RFP also adopted initial rules and regulations and still gave Rev and Tax the authority to implement the program itself or outsource it. So, once you have the stamps on hand, there's a possibility to start the program. But if they decide to issue the RFP as the law requires, if they decide to award it and outsource it, then of course it makes sense that you would wait and let the third party stand up the program.
All right, so is there anything in this bill that interferes with your IFB?
No.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll wait for another round.
Thank you. So just to get clarification, Deputy Director, you can stay till everyone has spoken to answer any questions. Just if that's okay, if you could stay.
Please, can you say that again?
So are you able, I guess the request from the speaker is that if you're able to stay and hear other testimonies for my colleagues for any further questions, to be here to field any further questions.
Okay, my apologies. My system is kind of garbled, so it's my system.
Okay, but can you just stay a little bit longer and we'll hear other testimonies and then we can ask questions, further questions?
Okay, I do. Okay. the it's just that I had a conflict. I have a meeting where I have people that are waiting for me for the presentation on our move. We're trying to get out of our current lease and move to another site. And right next door to me is a meeting and people inside. So
Okay, so then maybe I'll just have my colleagues, then, if they would like to ask questions, Assistant, I'm sorry, Minority Leader, if you have any questions for Deputy Director.
Yes, I do, Madam Chair, Tsedus Masi. For the listening audience and the public, Mr. Leon Guerrero, who is suing Rev Tax? What is the lawsuit about over this non-implementation?
I'm not sure whether I'm at liberty to discuss that.
That's not public information at the courthouse?
I'm not familiar with that.
Is Rev Tax concerned that if this would be a potential vendor or vendors that immediately we're starting out with an adversarial position if Rev Tax is being sued over non-implementation?
Well, those are the concerns, and we're trying to move with the current, the existing law that we have over here, and we've already ran into that conflict. So I think in just being cautious and moving forward, and I say again that we'll be happy to work with Senator Perez on the legislation of the future potential changes with the law, but we're just asking to retain our current movement and just complete where we're at.
So, Mr. Deputy, Mr. Guerrero, so the Attorney General, I'm going to move over to them, has just indicated that this bill in no way impedes what's currently on track, although there may be some further discussion. So Fred and Stephanie, are you in this process approving or have approved the IFB as to legality and form and working on the RFP as to legality or inform? Or are you also representing Rev Tax with regard in defending them as a government agency with regard to the current ongoing suit that has been mentioned?
Yes, and maybe. So, okay, first question for the IFB. So we don't approve to legality and form. We are, because we're funding the purchase, we're actually the agency that is putting together the IFB, and we're the agency going out for bid. Of course, it's for the stamps for Rev Tax, so we worked with them in preparing the bid specs and what have you. So that's our role in the IFB. We've submitted it to GSA because they're the ones who will sign off on it, assign it a number, etc. They'll kick it back to us to move forward. The RFP, we are assisting Rev Tax in a, I guess, sort of a hybrid role as their legal counsel in compiling the RFP. And then also helping to make sure, because we're the legal office as well, to make sure that the RFP is in compliance with all of the procurement requirements. If it results in a contract down the line, then we revisit what our role is, and of course, would then have to make sure we check all of the boxes. So it's IFP, RFP, and then, I'm sorry, now what was the third one?
The third question is,
okay, so for the writ, yeah. So it is public information that Rev Tax has been sued by Westco. Is it Westco?
Corazon, I don't remember who the.
I'm so sorry. It is. Well, the procedural, the question is who. I can confirm that in just a second. The procedural issue is that a petition has been filed for writ of mandamus, which is essentially a private party asking the court to enforce the government to take a necessary action. So in this case, the petitioner is asking the court to force Rev and Tax to proceed with the procurement. I'm apologize, I don't know the specific claim. I have not yet seen a copy of the petition. However, the court has issued the writ mandating Rev and Tax to move forward or to show cause, and our hearing is scheduled for May 19th. Now, that part is public information. There's public documents you guys can would have access to if interested. It's just the court filings. The details, of course, well, I don't know, but if I did know, I would not yet be at liberty to discuss until we talk with our client.
So that the public and our legislature is aware, are you representing Rev and Tax on the order to show cause?
That was the third question. We're not sure yet.
So back to the deputy director, have you secured counsel if you're not being represented by the Attorney General office?
Well, actually, the lawsuit is, as from my understanding, is a suit against a single individual, not against revenue and taxation. That's my understanding.
Who is the individual that's being sued?
I'm sorry?
You're a party to the suit. Who is the individual being sued?
The person that's being sued is the director of revenue and taxation.
But the director is conflicted out for this meeting or altogether?
Well, she does. There's two things. She's being sued, yes, but she's not providing testimony because of a conflict, so she's not able to come forward.
So back to the Attorney General's office. If the director is being sued, is that the entity as well, or the director in her personal capacity?
No. So
Go ahead.
This has to be clear.
Yes, it is. I apologize, I didn't have the specific answer earlier. It's Western Cells Trading Company is the petitioner, and they did bring action against Director Shimizu, but it is in her official capacity as the Rev and Tax Director.
So you would be instructing the deputy now that means the entity of Rev and Tax, right? Not an individual, or both?
I mean, she's the named defendant individually, but it is in her capacity as the Director of Rev and Tax. So in terms of representation, because the actions brought against her in her official capacity, there isn't necessarily a difference, so to speak, in whether or not we would represent her or the agency. It's the same authority because it's her official capacity. But they also have the authority they're one of the agencies that has authority to hire their own legal counsel. And so from what I understand, we have not yet resolved whether or not we'll be representing them or otherwise. So that's the only reason for me not having a clear answer.
So if I could some information, Senator Dueñas. So yeah, in dealing with the cigarette stamp tax, Director Shimizu has recused herself from the matter because of potential conflict of interest. And so that is why she has delegated the work to her deputy director. So last term it was Michelle Sanchez, and now it's frankly Angelero. I don't know if that helps any.
It does help, but I really need the deputy then in his capacity to be able to answer these fundamental questions. And so I think the deputy has to know whether or not Rev and Tax has secured counsel, because otherwise, how have they represented Rev and Tax now that they're in the situation where they have to answer to the courts and either do what's being prescribed or show cause. And I would think that the entity should secure itself by having counsel, either the Attorney General or private counsel. That's something that our government has to do to protect itself.
Yes, Senator. We're in that process and we're addressing that. And as the Office of Attorney General had mentioned, there are in review of the lawsuit and representation from my understanding, has not been secured. But we are prepared to defend or prepare for against revenue and taxation.
Okay, for this first round, Madam Chair, I have to say that's extremely concerning to me that we are not certain as to proper representation for rev and tax. I'll save other questions and let other members ask. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Reyes. Senator Ada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what I'm going to do is yield for other testimonies to come in first. And I think we need to hear the testimonies on the bill, and perhaps Madam Chair, as the chair for the Revenue and Taxation, maybe this could be an oversight separate from the bill itself. So that's my take.
Absolutely. Yeah, so thank you for that. If that's okay with the rest of my colleagues, if we can continue with the testimonies, or would you like to ask a question? All right, so the next person on the list is Ricardo Denis. If you can provide your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to all the senators on the panel. I'd also like to recognize Congressman Michael St. Nicholas, who's here on the meeting as well. And I believe Mayor Jesse Alec from PD, my mayor, Viva PD. My name is Ricardo C. Dueñas, and I represent Western Sales Trading Company. Wesco has been in business in Guam since 1984, and over the past 36 years has grown into the largest distributor of tobacco cigarettes in Micronesia. We are here today to submit testimony in opposition of Bill 104-36. While we are in support of the tax stamp program as authorized under Public Law 34-55, enacted on October 14, 2017, and Public Law 35-129, enacted into law on December 27, 2020, we do not support Bill 104-36. Prior legislation establishing the tobacco stamp program required the implementation of Public Law 34-55 in a phased manner. Public Law 34-55 required the Department of Revenue and Taxation to submit an implementation plan within 90 days, which was January 14, 2018, to begin selling tax stamps to licensees, and also within 180 days to begin those sales. Full implementation of the tax stamp program was to be effective no later than 1 year after the enactment, which was on October 13, 2018. In all three cases, these deadlines came and went with no action or request for extension from the Department of Revenue and Taxation. In response to DRT's inaction, Public Law 35-129 was introduced, debated, and passed by the 35th Guam Legislature on December 17, 2020, and lapsed into law on December 27, 2020. The law outlined additional rules and regulations regarding the tax stamp program and required DRT to implement a program and secure the design and procurement of the required tax stamps within 90 days of enactment, which was March 29, 2021. In the absence of this action, DRT was required to issue a RFP to procure the stamps required under the law. As of today, we have not seen any action that has occurred from DRT. Bill 104-36 does nothing to address the inaction of DRT in implementing the tax stamp program, and would only serve, as testified by Department of Revenue and Taxation's Deputy Director, to further delay the implementation of the tax stamp law. This after 3.5 years of its initial implementation. Bill 104-36 proposes the following. It requires the payment of tax stamps by a licensee to be collected immediately at the point of purchase of the stamps from DRT. We do not oppose this proposal, as it would provide a more efficient collection and eliminate any potential for manipulation, and it is consistent with practices of tax stamp programs in other jurisdictions of the United States. Second, under the current law, licensees would be responsible for the purchase of a tax stamping machine that is in compliance with the specifications of DRT and bear the cost for the actual affixing of the stamps onto each pack of cigarettes. Public Law 34-55 provides a discount for 0.4% to compensate licensees for these costs. This type of discount is consistent with other tax stamps programs within the United States. Bill 104 proposes to limit this discount to the first 2 years upon enactment. After this 2-year period, the discount would be disallowed, even though the associated cost to the licensees would continue. We do not support this proposal as it imposes an undue burden on the licensees. Third, Bill 104-36 proposes to implement a 1% stamp fee on the denominated value of each stamp sold to the licensee. This fee is in effect a tax increase on tobacco taxes, and it provides no rationale or justification for the increase. It is assumed that the fee is sought to recoup the cost of production of the tax stamp and the administration of the program. Yet, we see no evidence which details the cost of the production of any tax stamps or the increase in costs to administer the program. To the contrary, even in DRT's previous testimony on Bill 368-35, they surmised that the existence of a tax stamp program would streamline collection and surveillance costs associated with the current system in place. While this fee is essentially an increase in tax, it bypasses existing law that any tax increase be submitted to voters for approval. As a tax increase, no economic impact study has been conducted on the proposed increase. The proceeds would go into a separate fund under the sole administration and control of the Director of Department of Revenue and Taxation. It would not be subject to any transfer authority of the governor and not subject to any spending restraints by the Guam legislature. Further, Bill 104-36 provides that DRT by rule may modify the stamp fee. Thus, the fee may be modified solely by DRT without any requirement of review by the Guam legislature. This amounts to a blank check. For these reasons, we do not support Bill 104-36. While the author of Bill 104-36 contends that prior legislation provided no funding for the initial establishment or continued operation of the tax stamp program, in fact, Public Law 34-55 provided an appropriation for $200,000 through the Attorney General's office for the initial funding for the sole purpose of the enforcement of the program. And such appropriation shall not lapse and shall continue until fully expended. Once the program is fully implemented, the resulting increase in collections would more than offset the administering program. So thank you to the Attorney General's office for offering the $60,000 out of the $200,000 that has been appropriated to your office. It has been 3.5 years since the tobacco tax stamp program was mandated under Public Law 34-55. In that time, the government of Guam has continued to lose millions of dollars in unreported and undercollected tobacco tax. During public testimony on Bill 368-35 in late 2020, DRT publicly stated that they had already met with the Attorney General and had addressed what they felt were technical issues with the existing law and were close to implementing the tax stamp program. Yet no visible progress has been seen. The focus of the Guam legislature and the government of Guam should be on the immediate implementation of the tax stamp program. Instead of rushing to make changes and increase taxes, the Guam legislature should be asking DRT in an oversight hearing to provide an update to the following. What steps have been taken to design and procure the tax stamps from a reputable vendor? Has any RFP or IFB been issued to secure these services? What expected specifications will be required in any machinery to be procured by the licensees? Without exact specifications, such machines cannot be procured by these licensees. Has DRT developed any rules or procedures on how, when, where, and from who licensees can obtain tax stamps? Has DRT begun to develop any of the required forms or reports to monitor the sales of stamps to licensees, and more importantly, to monitor and secure the control and safeguarding of stamp inventory held by DRT? Now, there are so many unanswered questions that need to be addressed by DRT in a public oversight hearing. These questions and an update on any current progress should be undertaken before any attempt to modify the existing statutes. Therefore, we seek every member of this body and the administration to oppose Bill 104-36, and we call on the committee to conduct an oversight hearing to answer these questions. On an additional note, the question has come up in some prior regarding the lawsuit. Western Sales Trading Company has filed a alternative writ of mandamus against the Director of Revenue Taxation in her official capacity, asking simply for the implementation of existing public law for the implementation of the tax stamp program, and barring that, appear before the court and show cause as to why they have not proceeded with the implementation after 3.5 years of enactment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dueñas, for your testimony. I would like to recognize Congressman Sinico. I understand that you are here to provide testimony.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Guam legislature for the work that you do and us trying to navigate a way to finally get these tax stamps implemented. As the author of the original legislation, which was Bill number 77-34 that became Public Law 34-55, we wrote this legislation in a manner that really facilitated as much as possible across government and private sector the implementation of the tax stamp program. This was 4 years ago, going on 4 years when we passed this initial legislation. And we haven't made any progress on the government side on the implementation of the tax stamps. After we passed this legislation, which by the way had all 15 senators of the legislatura supporting it at the time, we had an audit previously by the public auditor, Doris Brooks at the time, that basically made it very plain that a significant sum of cigarette taxes was going uncollected. $14 million was basically identified as a potential sum. Fast forward 4 years later, we have a second public auditor, again stating that we are not resolving this problem. And the agency that the problem originated in, the Department of Revenue and Taxation, that caused the $14 million liability, that precipitated the introduction of what became Public Law 34-55, did not implement the law and continued to not resolve the collection issue to a point where a second auditor continued to cite them for the problem. Fast forward now to Bill 104-36 that we're discussing today, Madam Chair. We're looking at not only continuing to maintain that very same agency that's very clearly demonstrated an unwillingness to take the responsibility, but now we're going to be adding a fee on top of the tax stamp and giving that fee to that very same agency for not doing its job to begin with. You know, and that's, I mean, it's adding insult to injury. And we also need to factor in the cost of the surety bond that's being proposed in Bill 104-36. Surety bonds aren't free. Those also have an implied cost. And so when you have tax stamps having a fee attached to it, when you have surety bonds that are having a cost attached to it, those costs are going to get passed to the consumer. And the additional salt in the wound on top of the insult to injury is the fact that we're now going to be assessing greater costs to these consumers for the agency not doing its job to begin with, that resulted in those very same consumers paying taxes on the product while those taxes were not being remediated to the sources that were supposed to be receiving it. When we introduced Public Law 77-34, I'm sorry, Public Law 34-55, It was at a time when we were discussing raising taxes with an increase in the business privilege tax because of the Guam Memorial Hospital and its crisis situation. We were having, I believe, a fire station was closed down. There was a lot of community angst and public suffering in order to address what was being presented as an emergency at GMH, which we all know is continuing to be a going concern. But when you go back and review the fact that we were under collecting these cigarette taxes to begin with, and those taxes were supposed to have been funding GMH over all those years, again, it's just another example of how in our government, we were the ones creating the very injury and then adding the cost to the public. And so Public Law 104-36 is a repeat of that. It's a repeat of that because initially this effort for tax stamps, creating the discount, being very generous on the timeliness of payments, all of that was designed to address the injury of the initial increase in BPT and the fact that our hospital should be receiving those resources and our people should not be suffering tax increases. And now we're going to add a fee on top of that and a surety on top of that because the government did not implement what was so clearly spelled out in the law. We don't need to be raising taxes on our people. We should be avoiding that as much as possible. And granted, this is a syntax product, but the principle remains the same. You know, and for us to be trying to increase a fee and a charge and a tax and a surety bond cost due to government inaction is really just something that I do not prescribe to, and I urge I was going to say my colleagues, but you will always be my colleagues. I urge my colleagues to really consider that. Additionally, what is Public Law 35-129, Bill 368-35? This legislation came in after I left the legislature, and I watched it very closely with great interest. 14 senators voted in favor of this legislation. And this legislation was just passed and enacted into law 5 months ago. 5 months ago, in December of 2020. And what this did was it required DRT to go out and issue an RFP. I think the logic behind it was these senators said, you know what, DRT is not moving. It's been 4 years. We continue to not bring in these revenues. Let's go out and privatize it, and let's go out and get an RFP in place so that we can have a company or a vendor go out and collect implement this law and get these taxes rolling in. Just 5 months ago. And what happened? What happened when this law passed? We actually empowered our people to be able to go out there and finally get the government to do what it wasn't doing. They filed a suit. They are now compelled to respond by May 19th. If we did not have Public Law 35-129, we would very likely still be sitting here wondering when tax stamps are going to be implemented. Because for 4 years, we did not see Bill 104-36. And we were very, very clearly aware of the problem. And then on top of that, Madam Chair, when we have the argument that 104-36 may only create a revenue stream of $300,000 to fund this and save us $12 million, if the math and the outcomes and the intent was really so clear and so plain, why didn't the government do this over the 4 years? I mean, surely the government would be more than happy to spend $300,000 to bring in 12 million. But the problem is that we're talking about saving money that isn't even being collected. Because the way Public Law 35-129 is written is that whoever the private vendor is going to be able to, in their bid, assess a fee no more than 12% of what the collections are on the tax. And on the surface, it may be like, oh, wow, that could be a lot of money. But what we need to actually realize is we are incentivizing implementation, enforcement, collection of something that the government has not been willing to move on for decades, and even in the last 4 years after the law was implemented. If, in fact, the math does come out that it costs $12 million, what does that mean at 12%? It means we brought in $100 million in cigarette tax revenue. It means that we have $88 million in the Healthy Futures Fund. And that is a dramatic improvement over the under collections that we've been suffering from over all these years. And there is very significant benefit to the very clever partnership that is Public Law 35-129, because by incentivizing the collection, you maximize the revenues. Bill 104-36, intending to save 12 million that isn't even there, is assuming that DRT, that wasn't able to do this for decades, that hasn't done this in the last 4 years, is all of a sudden going to take $300,000 and 100% implement the enforcement of the law. For me, after all these years and after all these examples, there's just no confidence. We can't keep going back to the same agency that wasn't doing its job, give them more and incentivize them and say, here's more money without even making sure they're going to continue doing their job. Because when we pass, if Bill 104-36 passes into law and it fixes the stamp charges, we're not going to see private sector involvement. We're not going to see vendors interested because the cost is not going to be beneficial for them to participate. And what does that do in the end? It's a chilling effect that's going to prevent the very same actions that we are seeing to finally compel movement. The lawsuits compelling DRT to do this would go away. Private sector interest would not be there. And in the end, all we would have is the very same system where our government, our legislature, our oversight, our agencies that are responsible for doing what the law says, I mean, who's going to make them do it? They haven't been doing it ever since. So let's not turn back the clock. I've observed over the last several years 34-155 languish. With the passage of 35-129, we finally have movement after just 5 months. 104-36 is going to take that trajectory off the table, and it's going to increase cost to our consumers and give the money to the very same agency that has compounded the problem and resulted in everything from BPT increases for the hospital to a lack of funding for those agencies that so critically need it. Cancer care, cancer research, smoking cessation. Let's get them the 88 million. And once we get there, then we can talk about maybe ways to try and squeeze out the other 12. But for us to try and be penny wise and pound foolish when the evidence is so clear that that is the very case that we're dealing with, we should not be going backwards. Let's continue to move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Congressman Nicholas. And I think there was some clarification that needs to be made regarding the voting record. It wasn't almost unanimous. There were more, it was a close vote on that one. So we'd have to go back and check the voting record on that. In regards to the tax stamps themselves, they had to clarify with the AG regarding whether it was a double taxation. And so the recent opinion by the AG was that the tax stamps are one and the same as the tobacco taxes. So the stamps and the tobacco taxes are one and the same, and they are not an added cost. So that's what I wanted to make that clarification. All right, so the next person who has signed up today is sorry about that. Mr. Shimizu, you're on the list, so I appreciate it if you can provide testimony.
Yes, good morning, Senator and all the senators. My name is Tom Shimizu. I work for Ambrose. Yeah, I just wanted to testify briefly that we don't support Bill 104-36 because it is an increase in taxes for sure. I am glad to hear the clarification that the implementation of the tax stamp isn't gonna be a double tax stamp. That it does get rid of the old cost, or it replaces the cost, and it's not in addition to, because I think there was legislation that was implemented that did that, and it increased something, but it didn't get rid of what it was supposed to replace. So I'm glad to hear that clarification. Another concern, besides it being an increase in tax, is it creates a special lockbox fund, which we know that there are several of those that are locked for specific reasons that somehow get unlocked and just put into the general fund. The other, I guess the other concern is that, yeah, we just need to make sure that the stamps that are used are from a reputable company that is already doing the business. There's several in the US, because it will allow for, there's many ways to apply it, because if it's just something from somebody's print shop, then it becomes a manual process for the distributors. And I think the only other thing that I want to point out is, well, there's a couple things, but enforcement. When the tax stamp is implemented, you got to ensure enforcement, or else its usage. You won't catch the illicit product, meaning product being sold without the stamp, because there are, there's going to be a lot of that if nobody's watching and nobody's checking on a regular basis. And then I think the only other concern is having the stamps in revenue tax. What's going to be the process to ensure that those don't go out the back door? That stamps don't get given for free. I mean, I think I was thinking, even the pandemic, revenue tax was closed. How do we conduct business if they're closed in another pandemic, for example? And something to consider is maybe go through the banks, have the banks hold onto the stamps, and then when I need stamps, I go to the bank and buy it from them. Obviously, with the additional funds being collected, the banks won't do it for free, but give them a fee, give them part of that proposed fee or whatnot. But that way, it's convenient. I get to go when I want, any day of the week, to get it, as opposed to you got to make an appointment for inspections, etc. So that's the main reasons why we don't support Bill 104-36. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shimizu, for your testimony. And now we have Deputy Attorney General Stephanie Mendiola for her testimony.
Thank you, Senator Perez and members of the committee. And I mean, we already kind of jumped in, so we won't really rehash any of the points we made earlier. But if we could just speak to one other angle one other role, I should say, that our office is involved in particular to cigarette stamp taxes, is that we're also the agency responsible for monitoring the sales under the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement. And I will certainly defer to Fred on any questions. He's been working on it for over a decade, but there are bigger picture things that the conversation is highlighting today. To the specific, just for the record, for Bill 104 in particular, I think one good thing is it seems that we're all in agreement that the elimination of the delayed payment mechanism, there isn't a great opposition to that particular component of the bill. And insofar as our responsibility in tracking the tobacco sales, that would help in that respect. So we do support the elimination of the delayed payment mechanism. I guess that was the only thing we hadn't covered in today's conversation so far, but I certainly can't speak for revenue tax and what the issues have been in implementing. Our office has done our best to deliver on our promise that we made about a year ago. Of course, we're dealing with changes in leadership and administration, but to help them with this process. And in terms of what can be shown, what people are asking about, as you mentioned, there were issues, the request for legal opinions, because there were issues about clarification of the law. We worked on that. And then the biggest thing, of course, is where are the stamps, right? So we're moving forward with the IFB as fast as we could. And of course, that requires work with revenue and taxation. For the record and the bigger picture, our role is enforcement and investigation. And however the cards may fall, we have to respect the decision of the agency, whether they want to keep it in-house or whether they decide to outsource. The law does mandate that they issue the RFP. The law does not mandate that they eventually award it. That's going to be a decision they will have to make. But whichever way, we're ready. So far, we've been enforcing. We don't have a standard enforcement program. We don't have, for example, randomized checks on particular vendors, but we definitely do get complaints. This is another area where community policing is very effective. The companies kind of help us with that. And when we get the complaints, we do investigate them and we do take action, and we stand prepared to continue to do that. That's pretty much the gist of it. If there are any questions, we are happy to answer. Oh, I'm sorry, I did have one thing on Mr. Dueñas's testimony. He mentioned about the initial appropriation, and I admittedly am not familiar with it, and we'll look into that because it is a fair point. If you're identifying that we were appropriated $200,000 for this, then $60,000 is not a gift, certainly. But I'm admittedly not familiar with that, and we will look into that. Our understanding is that there had been issues with resources on rev and tax side, and so that's where we thought, okay, let's figure out how to get creative, identify the funding. Let's just get the stamps and then figure out how we can move forward. But that was the only clarification I had so far. Thank you very much, and we're happy to take any further questions.
All right, thank you, Deputy Attorney General Mendiola. I would also like to give the floor to Assistant Attorney General Nishihara if he has anything to add. No, okay.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, so yeah, maybe I'll reserve questions for later. So if the speaker would like to proceed with any questions to anybody, the agencies.
Sure, I'd like to ask the Attorney General. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for your testimony. Does the bill interfere with the decision that you said, or the choice that Revenue and Taxation is able to make under current law as to whether they're going to go in-house or privatize this enforcement?
It doesn't restrict their decision, but I think Congressman Nicholas kind of touched on it. It might disincentivize participation by a third party because, I mean, technical language aside, the effective outcome is, do we want to keep this government function within the government, or do we want to outsource it? That's ultimately the question.
If they chose outsourcing, how does this disincentivize them? If they chose outsourcing, the same deal would apply, wouldn't it? That they would receive the millions of dollars that were predicted?
Yes, that is actually one thing I guess we should clarify. Whether it's the fee, whether it's the set aside of the funding, whether it's the delayed mechanism, none of these provisions directly impact the ability of the agency to issue the RFP, because whatever the third party vendor would have to do or put together in their proposal, it would have to address whatever the requirements the legislature sets or whatever rules and regulations the agency sets. So to that end, they would still be able to run a program. They would still be able to put together a proposal. They would just have to recognize that some of the funding would change the way that the funding is divvied up.
How? Wouldn't it just be, they would make the same incentive that's under current law, less the amount that you are, the Attorney General's office is procuring the cost of the stamps?
Yes. Or yes.
It takes
would
away
give-
the proposed profit or the, how much are you expecting to pay for the stamps, may I ask?
It just, is it
Our market,
65?
yeah, no, our market research really does change anywhere from a half cent to a cent. And the reason why is nobody is as small as we are. So normally it's an economies of scale, right? The bigger states publish more stamps, they get it at a cheaper cost. And we're so small that we're not sure. So that's where we have gone between, you know, half a cent to all the way up to maybe 4 cents at the most expensive. I can tell you, Senator, that there are two different types of stamps that we looked at. One is I'll call it the trending. You have a couple of states that have used an adhesive stamp as opposed to the heat applied stamp, which is the majority of states that use that. We decided to go with the heat applied only because it was much cheaper and much more widely used amongst the states. So I think to answer Mr. Ricardo's or Dueñas's, yeah, or Shimizu, right? Any of the vendors or wholesalers, that's going to be the IFB. You know, that should be forthcoming in the next probably 2 weeks publication. Look for it. So yeah, there's a lot of security measures that are being put in there.
And if it's 1 cent or 4 cents, what is your estimate of what you might pay out under this IFB?
So it depends. You got to work backwards on the how many cigarettes are sold, right? And like the congressman pointed out, right? If you base on current figures as opposed to what previous or even the current OPA has stated, it just depends on how many. So the way the IFB is designed is it's open. In other words, we're going to purchase the first $60,000 worth. And thereafter, you can purchase more if you need more. But that is why some of the money that is received needs to go back to revenue tax, because although we can purchase the first batch, the second, third, fourth batch, if there's no funding for it, you will run out of stamps, and then the whole program will just go down the toilet, basically. So you need a continuous funding source for the stamps, because a stamp program needs to have stamps when a vendor comes. You cannot say, don't sell the product anymore till we refill it. So that's why, notwithstanding, I know the cost is saying a plus 1%, but even if you take away the plus, I think some money needs to be reserved to replace those stamps. So, you know, I'm not objecting to the plus 1%, which is great for us, great for the revenue tax. But if you take away the plus, in other words, you just incorporate the cost in the $4 per pack tax, you need to reserve some of that money back to the Department of Revenue Tax for the replenishment of stamps.
And is that possible under the current law?
No, there is no funding source under current law, is my recollection. So that's why we felt that is very important.
To make a change. To allocate, to create a cigarette stamp tax fund, like a revolving fund.
Correct. And you can, like I said, right, use it out of the current $4 per pack. If some of that money could be set aside. Otherwise, we'd have to come to the legislature every year. The other danger too, right, is what if it does go gangbusters and you know, in fact, taxes does increase so much and we just don't have enough money to purchase the stamps. So that's why, you know, the more stamps we sell, the higher that little fund will go, and ensuring that you can replenish those stamps.
And what would the 0.5% that is allocated towards the Attorney General's office be used for under this bill?
So from our office point of view, that we, especially up front, would expect that a lot of administrative work to be done. So for example, if we find a violation at a retail store, some of the penalties, and I'm just going to say generally because we're not done with the rules and regulation, but you would penalize that retail store by confiscating maybe their inventory at that point in time. For sure, we can pull their, when I say we, revenue tax can pull their ability to sell cigarettes, their license. And likewise, those companies would have due process rights, and that would involve our office, right, representing in those administrative hearings. We also would enforce by sending our investigators out and now doing active investigations to make sure compliance, especially upfront. So when the program does go, you want to have a full force of investigators working with Revenue Tax to go out and almost blanket the island to make sure everybody has stamps at the retail site.
Is there, under the current law, is there anything to prevent the use of banks for issuing the stamps? I think that was at one of the prior hearings. That's why I'm asking.
So I wasn't at the prior hearing. I can tell you that's what states do use. I don't remember whether it was Mr. Shimizu or Dueñas used. But the way the other states use it is they tie it in with their financial system. So the person at their revenue and tax department never sees any of the money. They don't even see the stamp, quite honestly. I take it back. They have a small pack for, I'll call them boutique sellers. But generally, those rolls of cigarettes are held in a vault in a bank. The transaction is made, and the bank just reports what stamp numbers went to the Revenue Tax. So when they go out and the Revenue Tax does their investigation, they can track back which distributor bought those stamps. But for Guam to work that, you would have to issue a RFP for their banking services. Our current banking services agreement doesn't expand to allow something like that. So is it possible? Yes. Does it need an RFP? Yes. It also needs money for that to occur. So that we don't have those in place.
What money? What is that for?
Because if you issue a RFP, that's going to cost, right? So if you want a bank to be the one to hold and issue and account for the stamps, that's going to be cost. I have no idea how much that would be, but that cost has to tie into our financial management system. And so it's a lot of things probably beyond my capabilities to tell you. It's not just that easy is what I'm saying.
Is a bank a potential private party under the current law? And would they be able to get the profit that we're trying to entice these private companies to run this program with?
No, I think in terms of cost, it would be in reference to preparing the RFP for services. So it wouldn't be profit off of this sale. It would just be the procurement of their services. I'm not entirely sure. I'm just speaking generically.
Then
sorry, I
that
didn't mean to
scenario you're describing, then who would get the 12 million? It wouldn't be the bank or whoever this private company is. I mean, doesn't the bank act in that capacity under this example that we're talking about?
If it's for, I'm not familiar with how the banks run it in other jurisdictions, but if it's for the holding and the issuing and the tracking of the stamps, that piece of the pie, that would be separate. It would be separate and apart from whatever the third party vendor would need to do. But I'm not sure for the RP purposes, I'm not sure that it would be an added profit based on the sale. It would just be an RFP for the services that the bank provides.
Okay, so they're not, the third party vendor is going to be needed, or is that what you're saying? If this,
I'm sorry.
Are you
I'm sorry.
saying, yeah, that it's not going to be the same? Like you're going to need a third party, in the current law, you're going to need a third party vendor and perhaps a bank, if that's what they want to do. They can't replace each other. The bank can't replace a third party vendor.
So, Senator, if I could speak to that, right? That's why, generally speaking, the intent of a RFP, right, is to say, here is the problem we have. Give us a proposal, right? And the bank and a third party vendor, or could be the bank, would be the one to submit the proposal. Now, remember, the proposal isn't just about getting stamps and issuing it, right? You need to account for those. BPT, how many stamps were either ruined or when cigarettes get stale, they're refunded back. So it's basically outsourcing that function of DRT to a private party, right? And so that's why it's difficult to answer your particular question because the more general you put a request for proposal, the more answers, proposals you'll get, right? Because my idea of how to solve the problem is going to be very different than a third-party vendor. So that's why it's hard to say what's going to happen in the future until we actually get the proposals. And taking it one step back further, right? It depends on how DRT wants to finalize the RFP. So that's the best I can do for you, Senator or Speaker.
And, Madam Speaker, if I may, I think it might help. It might be that there are a couple of like what is allowed under current law. The concepts are a little bit or provisions rather a little bit conflated. So under current law, if you're referring to current law as in the cigarette stamp tax program as it stands, Revenue Tax has the authority to stand up the program, right? Under current law, Public Law 35-129 that authorized the RFP, but also adopted initial rules and regulations, then there's this fork in the road for what they're going to do. The consideration of the bank services, that is also fairly narrow to, well, in this hypothetical conversation, is narrow to securing the stamps and then issuing out and then tracking. For the third-party vendor, what the legislature authorized or mandated for the RFP to cover was a little bit more than that. And so if we're talking about current law as it exists for what the agency can do, that is one baseline, and the agency has different options, and that includes using bank services. And then it's partly the bank managing the stamps, it's partly the agency administering the program, it's partly the OAG enforcing. Current law also addresses issuing the RFP. If the RFP is set out for the third-party vendor to do all of those things, the third-party vendor could also use a bank, could also do it itself, could also handle the administration, et cetera. I believe the only line in the sand here is the third-party vendor cannot outsource the enforcement authority, the law enforcement authority that rests with the OAG. So I hope that kind of clarifies how or in what ways bank services can be used in here as they are in other jurisdictions.
Well, yeah, my point was really just to clarify that the current law gives choices to the Department of Revenue and Taxation. This bill, I don't think limits those choices. I think it still allows them choices. Now I can understand, I think my next question might be for Mr. Shimizu from Ambrose, that of course, I can understand companies involved in this business objecting to, any increase fees or on these services. But if it's, we're going to privatize this away from Revenue and Taxation, and we've been told that Revenue and Taxation can do it for $300,000, which, is I don't know how they calculated, but that was the prior testimony that we received from the prior Deputy Director of Revenue and Taxation versus they're going to take the 12 million out of the revenue. And that's where they're going to get their money. And so this argument that, that's money that otherwise, if we had paid $300,000 to Revenue and Taxation, would be going to the public health agencies that are entitled to sin taxes under our current laws. And so I understand your opposition to any increased fees, but I'm thinking if it's structured similar to the current law where, this private company will be taking that money out of revenue versus, Department of Revenue and Taxation taking a much, much smaller amount out of revenue, that, I don't know. I just want you to consider that. But do you oppose the parts of the bill that change the payment dates? Because we heard from the other company, Western Sales, that they support that part of the bill that changed the payment date to payable at the point of purchase of the stamps.
Yeah, no, we don't oppose that. That's fine.
Okay. All right. And then if I could just clarify are there the Deputy Director or the Attorney General's office. So there's a part here, it's subsection C, sorry, it's on page 6 of the bill. And this is talking about, in the first sentence, it says, any taxpayer may delay the payment of taxes in accordance with 11 GCA 26601C, which is the bonded warehouse provision of the law, right? But then it goes further to say, payment for the stamps for cigarettes held and sold out of a bonded warehouse shall be made. And so it changes that to at the time of purchase from the department. And I just want to clarify if we all agree that purchase from the department in this bill would mean the time that tobacco products are withdrawn from the warehouse, consistent with 26601C. Do you read it that way? So we're not affecting that. I mean, it would be consistent, right, with current bonded warehouse procedures.
So if I understand your question correctly, and we would of course certainly defer to Rev and Tax on the operation side.
Yeah, when is the time of purchase from the department from a bonded warehouse?
So this sort of ties into more technical feedback we didn't really get into today, but I think the references, for example, at time of purchase or purchasing, that we just have to, and to Senator Perez, of course, I'd work with you on this, to make the references consistent, because in existing practice, you purchase on day one and then you pay on the 20th of the following month. So what we're trying to get at, and thankfully it's one thing we all agree on, is that let's just try to set up a system where you get the stamps, you pay for the stamps at the same time. I think what the bill is recognizing is that for, I guess, vendors, there may be certain scenarios where they need to request for that delayed. So getting to your question, Madam Speaker, I think it may need to still, the terminology may still need to be changed so that all the references are consistent. But for the bonded warehouse, it would just make allowance for those scenarios where vendors in good standing would then apply to the agency for that delayed payment mechanism, to take advantage for that delayed payment mechanism. And it looks like only for a delay of an additional month.
Right, so that would make them kind of equivalent to the current process. So anyways,
Yes.
I know there are others who want to ask questions. So yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to, close by saying that, yes, I was completely in support of the original law implementing mandating a tax stamp program for tobacco products. I still support that. I was not in support. I think the vote was 8-6 on the bill that changed that program and made, private vendors are going to take over the revenue and taxes role in implementing the program and pretty much making profit off of that program. I understand incentive, but I think we can also, I'm not going to vouch for revenue and taxation and the pretty much incompetence that's been implied here by them not being able to implement this program 4 years ago. But they did tell us 4 years ago that, they were not ready. And I'm hoping that they can be ready, but it's very disturbing to me that still, if they can't be ready, we have competent people in the government who can make this program ready. And I believe with the Attorney General's office assistance, they should do that, and that there should not be delay, and we should not delay getting, the additional taxes that we are losing because the program's not implemented. And but I still think that we can do it without giving away 12 million of those very precious resources that could go to these agencies. And I just feel like if we can get this done within the next few months, then we would save that much money into these sin taxes and put them where they're supposed to be. And so that's why I'm trying to see, under the current law, I think that revenue tax still has options, whether we, I'm not sure who is going to be operating this on the Department of Revenue and Taxation side, but if the Attorney General's office can get their side of this IFB done, we've got the stamps. There's nothing they said to prohibit or interfere with the current process, and I just hope to see that I'm advocating that they take that option, that they take the less expensive option where the government of Guam is going to keep the money and put it into the hospitals and public health agencies as originally intended. So, but I thank all of you for your testimony. It's been very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Speaker, if I could just give one quick comment with regard to your last comment, and that's with regard to the delay of payment till the 20th. And so especially from a master settlement agreement point of view, if we eliminate the requirement for the 20th day, and that's why I'm really glad that we heard from Mr. Shimizu and Mr. Dueñas, that should be able to eliminate even the need for a bonded warehouse, because at that point we could use the people who spend their day at bonded warehouse, and all we have to do is monitor the retail stores. Do they have stamps or not stamps, right? Because what our position would be, you cannot buy stamps individually. You have to buy them by the whole roll. So you got to buy 30,000 or 15,000, whatever the number is, by the whole roll. But what that would do was, when I need to know for master settlement agreements, well, how much stamp was sold, then I'd be able to get a hold of Revenue Tax and they'd say this much. Right now, the process entails us reconciling with, there's one division that does an enforcement at Revenue Tax, there's another division that does the collection, and another division kind of that does the reconciliation. So you can see the frustration, right? So making it more efficiency, less bureaucracy would be involved. If you do it, it's the equivalent of an upfront tax, right? It's kind of like when you go to the DMV and you pay for your car registration and they give you that little sticker that says 22 for next year, your car's good, you're registered. That's what the stamp does. So if we can create the system just like that, as far as government efficiency, a whole lot less steps are taken. So because there's no opposition to that part, if nothing else happens in this bill, if we eliminate that as soon as we get the stamps, that would be very helpful, because it'll be more efficient in the government of Guam.
Thank you
For the
very much.
record, he meant fee. He didn't mean upfront tax, because it's not a double tax.
That's true.
He meant fee.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Speaker. Minority Leader Chris Dueñas, if you have any questions.
Yes, Madam Chair, just a couple of points of clarification. I think no matter where this bill goes, I join the speaker. It appears as though the Attorney General's office has not that this is the argument, has just made the argument for showing cause. The issue is that we continue to believe and know that the original legislation that passed for the tax stamp, which I agree with, is still fully enforceable. And Revenue Taxation, as the author of this bill, previous to changing their position, had said that they were on the cusp of implementing this, themselves. And so I'm not going to speak to the audit of the revenue, but in terms of the collection of the revenue, that function was neither ready then nor is it ready now. So I agree with the speaker as well. In terms of escape revenue, we've got to do it, no question about it. But the bottom line is, it sounds like a Revenue Tax is still fully equipped to move forward. So I'm going to continue to work on this bill with the author moving forward. And I agree that while I am for public-private partnerships, I have concern when it comes to regulatory functions of the government. And so I think this will still continue to be a discussion of this issue going forward. So, Madam Chair, I know that there are other senators that probably want to chime in as well, but I think there's been much clarification. And the one thing I enjoy with this hearing so far is everybody's on board for the stamp. Everybody's on board to get this done. I like the idea, Fred, you're right. The bonded warehouse, and I've heard that from others, you don't need it anymore if you expedite this procedure moving forward and the stamp is available and it's at the vendor sites. You're ready to go, accounting for at the point of sale. So I think this has been a very productive meeting so far. Those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Okay, so at this time, Senator Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very good discussion. I appreciate the Congressman's time also. Good information as well, Mr. Dueñas and Mr. Simizu. I feel more comfortable if we further our discussion with another meeting coming up on this bill. And while it's still in committee, when we can have the Deputy Director's obligated time that he can answer some more of our questions. I'm sure we need some clarity, but I think it's important that the Deputy Director allows some enough time for us to further clarify this, because this will make a big difference and we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So I appreciate, Madam Chair, calling this meeting here, and very helpful, but I'd like to see this continue more with the committee as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Joanne Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I certainly share the comments of both Senator Dueñas and the speaker with regards to this issue. I think at the end of the day, this really comes down to simply being able to get these stamps on these cigarette packets, even though I myself am not a smoker, have no interest in it, but that's really been the difficulty. I mean, that was the whole issue that came up a few years ago about the inability of the Department of Revenue and Tax to be able to collect on the taxes owed on these cigarettes, and that taxes, that these cigarettes were coming into Guam, taxes were not being paid, therefore revenue that is owed to the government of Guam was not being collected. I mean, that's the bottom line, and that's the issue. Here we are several years later that still needs to be addressed. I share the concern Senator Dueñas has with regards to regulatory functions of the government being privatized. I think there are other areas certainly I would have less concern, but where the regulatory powers of the government exist, I think the government has an obligation to the people to ensure that it follows through with that, so that we can ensure that revenue that's due to the people is given to the people. So I would have concern about that. And I also had concern at the time, even though I was not a member of the legislature when this issue came up, of just simply wanting to ensure what was the agenda here. I was hopeful that this was not intended for any select company that was going to be having this opportunity, because I really wondered why the need was there, especially in regulatory functions of the government. This is not something I would like to see privatized, even though there's many other areas I don't have a problem with as much because there's services being provided, but regulatory roles in particular, that's like privatizing our police force. I would have a problem with that, because I think there's some fundamental responsibilities the government of Guam has, and it needs to execute. And I think we need to, and I agree, I think we should have a follow-up meeting with regards to this bill to get to the bottom of the issue as to why Revenue Tax has not been capable for whatever reason up until this point. I mean, I did hear publicly a few years ago that they said, yes, we could do the job, and then the testimony changed midstream. And then they were supportive of this legislation, and the flip-flop that happened with regards to that and what was behind the scenes that brought that into play. Nevertheless, I think we need to have that further discussion so we can find out. I mean, there are other areas recently Revenue Tax has been able to facilitate their services to the public. I don't see any reason why this is so complicated. Putting a stamp on a cigarette box or pack or whatever the case may be, I don't see that as a complicated process. So that we can facilitate for these businesses, and puts them at a disadvantage if they're starting to accumulate the obligation to pay, and they're not being able to help facilitate getting these stamps on, so that they can move on with the business at hand that they need to do and not be held hostage by this process either. So I think there's benefits in getting this issue clarified. And I would like to see the government address this issue themselves. Lately, we've had directors that have not been available or have had very short time to engage with the Guam legislature. I'm sure we're all busy, but I think in key issues like this, we would like to hope that they had been given advance notice so they can adjust their schedule and prioritize. But if we need to schedule another time where the deputy is available at the convenience of the legislature to have these further discussions and clarification, I think we very much need to get to the bottom of this issue. So we're not looking back another year or two again and trying to figure out why we've not gotten to the bottom of this issue, because it's not complicated. The process of what's involved here is not complicated. So why isn't it happening? I think that's a big question. That's certainly a question I think we'd all like to get answered. So with that, Madam Chair, I don't have any questions, but I would request, as was asked by Senator Dueñas, that we hold a follow-up meeting before this bill moves any further so that we can ask those very questions and have some sense of comfort, because I don't think we're here yet. And I don't hear anything this morning from Reverend Tex that gives me that level of comfort that we can move forward. I think we need clarification and we need a bottom answer with regards to this. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on this bill.
Thank you so much, Senator Brown. Senator Taitague.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak, and thank you to everyone who's here to testify today. Congressman, I'm glad to see that you're here, because I know, like any project in the legislature that you pursued or put forth became a law, sometimes they don't go through all the way. And it's kind of like task force. I'm still waiting for a couple task force bills that I introduced that passed into law, and still waiting for its implementation. And that's a simple task force, so something as complicated like this, I'm not surprised that you're here to advocate for this. And like everyone has says, we all agree that this needs to be done. And that comes from a former smoker. I quit a while ago, and hoping others will do the same. However, the Attorney General's office, and Senator Brown mentioned this, I was in the legislature when we had session and discussing the bill that did pass. And it was ironic because Reverend Tax came forth and basically said they can do this, and that was in the morning. Then we took a break for lunch. Next thing you know, they came back and said, oh, no, I guess we can't do this. It's ironic that unfortunately delays like this sometimes come with people with influence in politics to change things around. And what we're trying to do, and that's the delay here. I think that's what the delay is. I know that the companies that that sell cigarettes, their ambition here is the issue of cigarette pirating and people bringing in cigarettes that are not paid for by going through the process and being taxed, and then selling to the vendors. So these companies lose a lot of revenue because their vendors are purchasing it at a lower price. And that needs to stop, because it's not just hurting our companies who are legitimately paying their taxes, but it also hurts the public. It's illegal, it should not be done. I understand that. But the whole issue with Reverend Tax and their inability to move forward on something like this, I think they can do it, and they were on the road to doing that. I mean, it's justified when the Attorney General was able to obtain $60,000. And that's one of the questions I have. Can you tell me, the Attorney General's office, how are you able to get that $60,000 to move forward on this initiative?
So we'd like to thank the legislature very much. They gave us a fund, I want to say in 2019, for the collection of taxes, and then subsequently gave us, I'll call it the rollover, right, of that funds. So we use some of that funds, and because our division, consumer division, also does the collection, we've tied some of those funds together, and that's why we're saying this split funding to come up with the $60,000. So it's that's how we did it, Senator Taitague.
So tax collection and consumer protection funding.
Right.
Okay, and utilize that money to move forward. And I really thank you for doing that. I know that you two as well want to put this to rest, and move forward and actually see some of this collection that will assist the Attorney General's office. And that's the whole perspective I think about this bill here, is to provide a win-win for everyone. The vendors who actually, address their concerns of cigarette pirating or pirating cigarettes, out there in the community, as well as the Attorney General to be able to enforce, but have the mechanisms to sustain themselves. And I think the issues of being regulatory is a big problem here. And so I'm in full support of finding a way to keep this within Reverend Tax. They say, don't work harder, work smarter, not harder kind of scenario. And I see Fred laughing at that because it's true, and we both have that same initiative moving forward. So the funding that you receive at the Attorney General's office on the 5%, I think it is, 0.5% going to the Attorney General.
0.5 only, Senator.
0.5, yeah. I know you would like that 5%, but 0.5% as well as the rev and tax. We all know rev and tax is understaffed there, and this would bring the funding needed to them consistently, not like crossing their fingers for an appropriation at the end of the year. That this is something that can sustain them. And if we can do it in this manner and make it work, and I'm sorry, Congressman, but it may take a little bit longer, but I'm confident we're almost there. We're almost there to implement this for a win-win for the community, for our agencies, and for our vendors that sell these. They just want something fair. And so I too agree with maybe a roundtable, but not take too long. We can have one by next week, move forward with it. And then we go into session by the end of the month. Maybe, we can, with the help of the congressman pushing, like he's here today, that we can get this done and put on the table for our end of the May session agenda and move forward. So thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity and to be a sponsor of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Taitague. Senator Tony Atta?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. They were asked and answered by the AG's office, and I look forward to, like Senator Taitague said, probably having an additional roundtable if anything, but to have this piece of legislation placed onto the session agenda coming up. Thank you.
All right, I want to thank everyone who has come here today to participate in the hearing for Bill 104-36. And really, this bill was designed to help implement the cigarette stamp tax and also provide a funding source that can help stand up the program. And considering that we've heard many times that, the reason why it was not pushed forward was because it was an unfunded mandate. So what this bill provides, it helps to streamline the process in addition to ensuring there's a funding source, continuous funding source. But, having heard all the discussion, I am open to listening to, having further discussions with all the parties here and any other stakeholders. And like Senator Taitague said, maybe we can have it by next week and on session agenda by the end of the month. So I do appreciate everybody's participation, and Saduas Masi. So we're going to move on to the next item of the agenda. It's Bill 116-36, COR. It's sponsored by myself, co-sponsored by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Mooney Barnes, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Jose Pedo Terlaje, Senator James Moylan, Senator Telo T. Taitague, and Senator Anthony Atta. It's an act to amend sections 51202A, 51204, and 51207A, all of Chapter 51, Title 10 Guam Code Annotated, and to amend Section 40115C of Chapter 40, Title 5 Guam Code Annotated, and to amend Section 77114.3 of Chapter 77, Title 21 Guam Code Annotated, relative to enhancing the agency's capacity to address illegal dumping. So I'd just like to provide some brief comments about the bill. So Bill 116-36 seeks to increase enforcement capability of Guam EPA to address illegal dumping through the following means: expanding the scope of apprehending officers and including the purchase of supplies and equipment for the enforcement of litter laws. Bill 116-36 seeks to make a number of litter control revolving fund amendments, which would more efficiently and effectively direct these funds toward the end goal of ending illegal dumping. Specifically, Bill 116-36 will appropriate 25% of the funds collected from all assessments, fines, bail forfeitures, and other funds collected from or received pursuant to the Litter Control Act to the Judiciary of Guam, to allow Guam EPA to transfer up to 45% of the funds collected from an issued citation to the agency of an apprehending officer, and further appropriates 25% of funds from the Guam Beautification Fund to the beautification of public lands and not just sites that are most visible to the public as stated in current law. These amendments address the fact that not only is illegal dumping a complex and systemic issue, but the onus is on all of our agencies and not just Guam EPA to effectively attend to this issue. Simultaneously, this bill seeks to increase the fine for littering from a minimum of $200 to $500 to better reflect the harm this causes to our environment and public health of the people of Guam. And it will also go towards compensating the manpower that is needed to enforce. Further, persons convicted of a second or subsequent litter offense will be directed to conduct cleanup in all areas and affected by illegal dumping, not just in public places. Illegal dumping is an immense issue that requires collaboration of all our agencies. I just would like to mention that this idea came forward at one of the roundtables for illegal dumping, and we are that I hosted in the last term, and so this has come to fruition now, and so we did. So we wanted to push this forward with the actually it was a suggestion made by one of the staff at Guam EPA. So I look forward to hearing all your testimonies regarding this important measure. Just to give you an idea of the fiscal note, there's a fiscal note waiver per BBMR. The fees from these increase in penalties are intended to provide more adequate funding for agencies to proactively address litter. Absent historical data or information from the department affected, the Bureau isn't able to determine any estimate of revenue collection or an approximate fiscal impact at this time. So we sent out notices to all law enforcement agencies, conservation officers from the Department of Ag, airport police, port police, customs and quarantine, GPD, Guam Fire Department, Department of Parks and Rec, Department of Public Works, the Marshal of the Courts, Administrator of the Courts, and also the Mayor's Council of Guam and Guam EPA, who we have some here in attendance. So I would like to invite those that have come to testify. And so I'm so grateful that you guys are here. You stayed all morning, so I appreciate your time and patience. So I would like to recognize Mayor Alec. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'd like to welcome you to provide your testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Hafa Senators. My name is Jesse Alec, the mayor of PT and also the president of the Mayor's Council of Guam. And I come here this morning to testify in favor of Bill number 116-36 COR. The very fact that this bill proposes to enhance and strengthen the enforcement of the never-ending issue of illegal dumping, and more importantly, empowers mayors and vice mayors and provides an avenue for the Mayor's Council of Guam to share in the distribution of fees collected from violators of illegal dumping is reason enough to fully support and request for the passage and enactment of this bill. To make it abundantly clear the parameters of this proposal, we seek clarification or amendments to the proposal as follows. On line 18, page 2, to change assistant to vice. Line 23, section 4. This section is amended to give percentages of fees collected, but there is funding share for the Mayor's Council of Guam. If we are to be a part of the apprehending officers, so should we not also be given a portion of fees or fines collected for the same reason delineated in section 51204 of chapter 51, title 10 GCA. Line 13, page 3. This paragraph makes mention of a board. We request this proposal stipulate the percentage amount that will be given to the Mayor's Council of Guam rather than have a board decide how much the Mayor's Council of Guam is entitled to. Line 19, page 4, 1/2 to the Municipal Litter and Defacement Fund. This fund has been in existence for many years, but has never been established. We recommend to amend and change it to the Mayor's Council of Guam Revolving Fund, which is already established and audited annually. This will also allow for the MCOG to immediately access the funds deposited herein without having to go through a cumbersome process of the release of funds from the non-existing Municipal Litter and Defacement Fund. These clarifications and amendments will be a welcome step to making the village mayors and vice mayors an integral part and link to reducing the presence of illegal dumping on our island. We ask you for your support of this measure. This is Moss. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mayor Alec. So yes, I believe, yeah, we'll make those changes. We'll look at those changes, and I do believe in the current statute, the mayors are, yeah, like you said, it goes to a a litter control fund or defacement fund. So you would like that changed to the mayor's council, is that correct?
That is correct. The Mayor's Council revolving fund.
Revolving fund. Okay, so we'll take a look at that and we'll work with you on that. All right, thank you so much for your testimony. So I would like to recognize Glenn St. Nicholas from Guam EPA for his testimony. If you can turn on your video. Oh, great. Thanks, Glenn. Good morning. So you need to unmute yourself, please.
There you go. Good day, Madam Chair, Senator Perez, and senators of the Guam legislature. My name is Glenn St. Nicholas, Guam EPA Solid Waste Program Manager. Every year, volunteers clean up tons of trash along public easements and coastal areas around Guam. For example, during Earth Day, Guam EPA staff cleaned approximately 50 cubic yards of solid waste along the Harmon Sink Road located in Tamuning and is preparing litter citations for violators that were found. The island needs apprehending officers to enforce Guam's litter laws. Bill 11636 recognizes the importance of supporting these agencies. And on behalf of the Administrator of Guam EPA, Walter Leon Guerrero, Guam EPA supports Bill 116-36 with the following changes to the bill. The first change is Section 4B. Guam EPA Board as the administrator of funds to the other apprehending agencies. To apprehending agencies creating an account under the Litter Control Revolving Fund for direct deposit. And number two, 45% to 50% of the funds to go to the apprehending agencies who issue these citations to assist with the enforcement of 10 GCA Chapter 51, Article 2, litter control. We've been doing the same thing over and over again, expecting change. So let's support Bill 116-36 and hope for change, hope for a cleaner Guam. And to answer Mayor Alex's question on the mayors also being a part of collecting that 50% if they issue a citation, they are listed as an apprehending officer. And if those changes are made, then every citation that they issue, 50% from the litter control revolving fund will go directly into their account that they establish under the litter control fund. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. for your testimony. I will definitely look at the changes and amendments, and we'll work with you and all stakeholders. So thank you for your patience as well. Now I'd like to recognize Chief Steve Ignacio. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you for your patience, Chief.
No problem, Senator. Thank you and good morning, Chair, Senator Sabina Flores, Perez, and to the senators of the 36th Guam Legislature. And so the Guam Police Department supports the intent and the spirit of Bill 116, and expanding the authority to the CVPR, the Civilian Volunteer Police Reserves, which they already have the authority, but they're not. This just further enhances, further solidifies that. It does also expand it now into the Cape Volunteers, and unfortunately, the Guam Police Department, I think, only has 1 or 2 Cape Volunteers left in our Cape Volunteer program, and we have not. I have not worked on recruiting more Cape Volunteers. In addition to that, I don't even have a list of people who have come forward who have any interest anymore in the Cape Volunteer program. Initially, what had happened is that we were kind of using the Cape Volunteer to recruit into the Police Reserve program. And so most of the Cape Volunteers in the past programs have migrated up into the Reserve program. And then from there, they were supposed to, migrate over into the regular police officer program. But we will pull a call out to see if there are any more interested Cape Volunteers or any people that are interested in volunteering for the Cape program. Some of the things that I've talked about with Senator Moylan is probably expanding the authority for Cape Volunteers to come from the Neighborhood Watch programs. And this is something that we have talked about with the Mayor's Council as well, with the mayors. Some of their Neighborhood Watch program participants are interested in having that authority to issue citations for littering, and it's definitely something we can look into. The only thing, though, I will caution is that the Cape Volunteer is now recognized under the Post Commission as a Category 3 Post Commission member. And under that, Category 3 peace officers are peace officers who have authority to enforce governmental regulations or laws specified in their job description within the scope of the agency mission. And it's under Category 3, C2, Community Assisted Policing Effort Volunteer. So as you can see, they fall under the Post Commission as well. And so I'd have to look at the Post Commission rules under the Guam Administrative Rules to verify what kind of screening they would have to be subjected to. As you know, a Category 1, a police officer, has to go through a psych eval background and a polygraph. So I'd have to look further into the Category 3 requirements and to see if it's just a simple, maybe a police clearance, a court clearance, and maybe a real cursory background investigation, checking if they're wanted persons or have any prior convictions. And so, but either or, we support the intent of this measure, especially in the strengthening of the fines. I think for so long, the fines have been very nominal, and I think raising the fines to 500 to 1,000 goes probably a long way in holding people accountable, in making sure that when they do get caught littering, that they're going to face some hefty fines, and hopefully that'll be a deterrent in the future for people who who dump their trash. And I'd like to thank you for the time to speak today.
Masi, Chief Ignacio. Just a quick question. So as far as implementation, you just have to check to see what the requirements are for the Cape volunteers. But other than that, are there any kind of issues with them participating as a law enforcement in enforcement of illegal dumping? No,
They currently have other enforcement authorities. I believe they're covered under the statute that allows them to. I think you included them in your pause legislation. Yeah, so they're covered in that area as well, and they're also covered under the disability law. So they're allowed to issue citations under the handicap provisions. So they're recognized there as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Next we have Director Vince Ariola from DPW.
Day, good morning, Madam Chair and fellow senators, the Guam legislature. I don't have anything written, but I do have just a few comments to make on the bill, which I think it's a wonderful piece of legislation. First, just a little bit of background. As you probably already know, the Department of Public Works is mandated to basically take care of all our highways, assist in the trimming of trees and grass and things of that nature. So, quite a bit, you'll see the tractors out there and you'll see the men bush cutting, clearing the roadways and stuff like that. And it costs a lot of manpower and quite a bit of manpower hours to pick up the litter and pick up the trash along our roadways before we go out there and cut grass. So that's one of the things I really wanted to impress upon you, senators. It costs probably double the man hours in terms of us trimming the roadways and cutting the grass and the weeds, because we have to go out there first and send 2 or 3 workers and pick up the trash first before we start cutting the grass. And it does take a lot of time, so it's probably double the time that it takes us to redo a roadway. I wanted to specifically talk about the fines. I think the fines and the penalties should just be mandatory. If someone is guilty of littering or illegal dumping, I think judges shouldn't have any leeway to impose a fine. I think it should be mandatory, and I think the mandatory penalties should be $1,000 I think it should be mandatory to perform 160 hours minimum of community service. We just entered into the community service program with the Judiciary of Guam, where they'll be sending their offenders over here, and we're basically gonna send them out to the streets and pick up trash as well. This is part of the community service program. But again, $1,000 they should be fined, 160 hours minimum, and I believe they should spend a weekend in jail, 2 if not 3 days in jail. If you look at the amount of money that this island spends on picking up other people's trash, not our trash, because I don't litter. I don't believe anybody else on this panel litters. You know, the amount of money we spend out there to pick up, you know, the trash from these individuals who couldn't care less about the island, our environment, our tourism, our fellow citizens, the health and safety of our people. I think we need to stick it to them. Let's just put it that way, and just hit them hard and let the people know. You litter, you get caught, you're going to spend the weekend in jail. We're going to fine you $1,000. You're going to spend at least 4 weeks, 160 hours doing community service. And it's going to be mandatory, and there's no leeway. You get caught, and this is your payment back to the community. And that's those would be my suggestions to make to the bill. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Director Ariola. I appreciate your input and your testimony. So we would like to recognize Maneka de Oro from Micronesian Climate Change Alliance for her testimony. If you can put on, oh great. Good morning.
Hi, Hafiday, Senator Sabina, and esteemed guests on the panel. Micronesia Climate Change Alliance is a nonprofit dedicated to creating community-based solutions to the climate crisis. And we have spent most of since November, really diving deep into the waste crisis on our islands via our series, our TV series with KUAM called From Our Nanas for Our Nennies. And our two hosts, Cami Agarola and Francesca Dioro, followed the waste stream. We spoke to many people about illegal dumping. We also, in the month of April, staged 2 separate cleanups in one area that has reoccurring dumping in Chalon, Ramirez, Gigo near the Zero Down, Gilbaza, and Seifred communities. And we are committed to working with these communities to address and create long-term solutions to the dumping issue that is plaguing that part of our island. And I'm looking at the fines here, and a lot of the members in these communities don't even have power, and they run like hoses and power lines across homes. And these fines are really high for people. And I would really employ our leaders to look for positive incentives, not just punishment, insofar as addressing the waste crisis, because a lot of these people who do, and the bill recognizes this, a lot of these people who do revert to illegal dumping are from very low economic regions of our island and communities in our island. So it's really important to also engage those communities and ensure that in any educational resources that come out of the things that are published by this and from this recycle revolving fund also are translated and made accessible to other members of our community that don't have English as a first language. So I'd really want to ensure that all the signs and all of the publications talking about litter education are mindfully created to include the different communities that call this island home. Because if we post all those things and they can't read it because it's not a language that they're literate in, then it's just not going to reach those communities. So it's really important to really ensure that we engage the people and the communities that we know where illegal dumping is most prevalent, like the community that we're working with, and also wanting to work with them to build and create the solutions. And as much as punishment is and fines are a really good avenue at creating funds to promote more promote more resources, we also can and should look into working directly with communities to build and create the solutions for themselves as well, and with the businesses that live and work around those communities as well, to also take up some of the responsibility in maybe providing a monthly dump or a monthly dumpster or something like that for communities who can't afford to get monthly pickup. And we also want to back any legislation that provides universal trash pickup for our island, because we definitely feel like that's something that will benefit this endeavor as a whole. As any future bills around universal trash pickup, and possibly even having some of this funds fund something like that, which isn't in the bill right now. I also wanted to ask a question regarding the education component of this. It also stated that the EPA is inadequately or is lacking in addressing litter, and it's also because of the size of Glenn's manpower. So I just wanted to see who would be in charge of creating the educational resources in regards to litter. Whose role is it in the creation and the identification of the entities who will be creating that?
First of all, thank you for your testimony, Maneka. And yeah, I would guess to refer that question to Guam EPA regarding education.
You know, Guam EPA has a recycling officer, and as a part of her mandates is outreach and education. I know that there is a lot of emphasis placed on the recycling revolving fund and the basically the recyclables portion of it. The mayors as well, they avail to the removal of recyclables. Unfortunately, they don't have a fund to address illegal dumping. They'll recycle whatever they can, and all the trash they get, you know, they'll collect it, and it's on them to dispose of. So in terms of the education and outreach, you know, we try to do as much as we can in-house with our PIO, and we also have Jacobs as a contractor to do outreach on the recyclables component and the sustainability component. On the illegal dumping, though, I would most likely defer that to our recycling officer.
Thanks, Glenn.
Right, thank you. We did have more people come on board, but I think they had other engagements. But we did have Attorney Alicia Limtiaco earlier to provide testimony. I hope we can receive her written testimony. We also had the Director of DPR, Parks and Rec, Roque Alcantara, and Tony Lamarena was also, and GM Rory Respicio. So we'll try to reach out to them to receive their testimony. But okay, so at this point, we're going to open it up to questions. I guess I would like to start out with, so the whole intent of this bill was to expand the enforcement capability of Guam EPA. So Glenn, can you share with us how many staff members are available that actually enforce illegal dumping at Guam EPA?
Actively, there's 4 staff, but the 4 staff member, 3 of which is in the solid waste management program. 1 is in the air pollution control program. The whole agency has taken the citation training from the courts, and they're all capable of also issuing citations. And I know that Mayor Alec issued a citation as well in his village. So I don't know who else or what other agencies have issued. I think the courts have more visibility on the participation efforts from those other agencies. I can only speak on behalf of Guam EPA. So according to court documents, within the last 5 years, I believe there was approximately maybe over 100 of the litter citations that were issued. And even though it looks like a low number for the last 5 years, Guam EPA also has a solid waste program which is a part of Chapter 51, Article 1, and the mechanisms that we use for enforcement for violators, property violators on their property, and also illegal dumping. We issue written warnings, which is basically a field notice of violation. If there's non-compliance, it leads into a notice of violation order of compliance with fines of up to $1,000 a day per violation, and oftentimes, there's 3 violations just by default. We get compliance that way, but I think the litter along public easements is highly visible to our residents and to our visitors as well. And as we all know, every year during the coastal cleanup, tons of trash is picked up every year, and that is a result of littering and illegal dumping.
And so how many man hours, so Glenn, if you can, I guess, share with us, how many man hours go into enforcing one, let's say, one illegal dump site?
I like to say that when we get a complaint and we investigate a site, depending on the type of site and depending on the evidence, if we go to a site and the whole, I'll give you an example, Ukudu pipeline, for example, that whole pipeline is just littered and illegal dumping. So we have to go through the site, and then we'll look for evidence. And when we find evidence, then it's a process. If it's not clear as to how to get in touch with these individuals, we reach out to Department of Revenue and Taxation motor vehicles and driver's license to try and get information on the personal identifiable information that we found on site. So working with other agencies to get the citation out to these individuals, we basically have to request for their support. And after obtaining the information, oftentimes the information provided, because of whatever reason, these people move a lot. They are no longer in the homes or the addresses, or their contact information is no longer valid. But what they do have in common is a P.O. box. So we end up issuing a citation via certified mail. If we do get in contact with them, then we ask them to come in, and then we issue the citation that way. And if they don't come in, then we go to their last known address, and oftentimes it's not where they live. So we end up just sending it via certified mail. And that's where the courts come in. The courts receive all this information, and based on their reach, they'll look at their resources to see if they can find these individuals, and they log the information on their database and on the website of citations that are unpaid, along with the names of the individuals. So they have a process, and unfortunately, some of these people, they're just nowhere to be found. So we're still working the issue in terms of trying to find out where these people, live. But the man hours, it stems from Guam EPA investigating, the courts issuing a subpoena to the officer, to the individual, and then the court's time. So there's a lot of man hours just that are put into a litter citation, especially if it's contested.
So, yeah, this bill basically allows the apprehending officers to avail of themselves of some of the citation money. So it's still, there's still a process that, as far as deputizing is concerned, that's still in place. It doesn't change any of that. Is that correct?
Correct. The apprehending officers are already identified by law, and the courts, they provide the citation training for the issuance of the citations. Guam EPA also provides a more detailed litter citation training for those who are in need of that service. But those mechanisms are still in place.
So then that would, if should this bill pass, then you would be, Guam EPA would then be tasked with more, I guess, training these officers on how to investigate and document illegal dumping.
Fortunately, these apprehending officers have already been identified, and maybe with the exception of maybe the Mayor's Council of Guam or the mayors, they're already uniformed personnel who already have citation training, and it's just a matter of giving them the citation to cite. But otherwise, the training is provided by the Judiciary of Guam and Guam EPA, and most of the apprehending officers, with the exception of the mayors and maybe Public Works and maybe Public Health, they're in need of training, initial training from Judiciary and reoccurring training from Guam EPA.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of lead to the point that, from 4 staff members all the way to, expanding that capability to all the law enforcement, agencies, I think that would greatly help with the, hopefully that would greatly increase the enforcement capability. And this is just one approach, right? I mean, there's other bills that I've introduced or will introduce that, it helps to curb illegal dumping. But in regards to enforcement, we heard from after that roundtable that enforcement is a problem, and so this is one way to address that issue. So thank you.
And with the implementation of the plastic bag ban, the upcoming polystyrene packaging ban, and the implementation of the bottle bill, I think litter is on its way out. And of course, the mandatory or required trash service for residents and business, I think litter is going to decrease dramatically.
Okay, thank you. I just want to open up the floor to my colleagues for any questions. Senator Jim Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions. Thank you to the panel for the information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Toniata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Ignacio, you mentioned about the Cape volunteers that, the numbers have went down. How do people apply to become volunteers so that, perhaps when you get more folks on board in the Cape volunteers, would be able to, policing would be even stronger?
They just have to come to my office or to our volunteer services section, which is under the Special Operations Division, and just fill out an application. We just use the standard Government of Guam application, so that we have some kind of document in place showing that they're interested in the Cape volunteer program. I have tried to expand the police reserve program. Unfortunately, one of the criteria that I was looking for is that you graduated from the Criminal Justice Academy or the Basic Law Enforcement Academy with the Guam Community College, so that they have the prerequisite training in place, and then we just provide additional training for them to meet the requirements of a police officer. Unfortunately, though, of the 20 applications that I have on hand, only 6 people meet that criteria. So 6 is not enough to start an academy, especially because it's going to be a police reserve academy. So they're not going to fall under the Guam Community College. So it's going to be in-house training, and we're going to lose them through maybe it's not what they want to do. If then they come in and they find out it's not what they want to do, and just 6 is not enough to start a training. And so we've been targeting these graduates of the Criminal Justice Academy, whether full-time police officers or even police reserve. But again, the interest is not there.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get more people on board and help you with your effort to get more police officers on board as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, and thank you, sir. And Senator Perez, if I may add a comment regarding, and I put it in the chat, regarding motor vehicles. So, one of the things that is encountered frequently when we're talking about illegal dumping is the illegal dumping of motor vehicles. And, I offer that maybe we start to treat motor vehicles like we treat firearms. So in order for firearms to be transferred legally on Guam, both owners have to be present at the armory so that the previous owner can transfer it lawfully and in person in the armory to the new owner. We're not seeing that with motor vehicles. So what happens is that motor vehicles can go through 3 or 4 owners. And so when we try to address abandoned vehicles, the problem is that we can't hold the registered owner responsible because sometimes it's military and they've left off island. Sometimes it's gone through 3 or 4 hands and they just never re-registered the car to the current owner. Current law only requires that within 3 days of you obtaining a vehicle through a private sale is that you have to register it with the Department of Motor Vehicle or the Division of Motor Vehicle. I would offer that any sale of a motor vehicle has to actually be done by the seller and the buyer, immediately and in person at motor vehicle. That way we can track how who owns these cars that we're seeing abandoned on the side of the road or in these Chamorro Land Trust properties that we're seeing in the media. And that's always been a challenge for the mayors and for EPA and even the Guam Police Department is that we can't find the current owner, and we go to the registered owners like, I'm sorry, I sold that car 10 years ago, and the new owner got the ownership. They just never properly transferred it. The new owner may have sold it to another person, the other person, so on and so forth. I personally have seen it. Recently there were 2 cars dumped across the street in an abandoned house that I informed the mayor of Barrigada where I live, and they said, hey, look at these 2 cars, and on my street, it's a very residential street. There's actually 3 cars that are abandoned. But as we tried to track down the registered owner, it was that story. I'm sorry, I sold the car many years ago. I don't know where the owner is now anymore. So that, and Mayor Ali can attest to this. That's one of the challenges we have, and I'm sure Glenn St. Nicholas as well. So maybe not in this bill, but maybe we can look at Title 16 for motor vehicle registration and make that a requirement that if you sell a car, you have to go to motor vehicle and you have to register it then and there to the new owner so that it's easier for us to track these abandoned vehicles. Because that's a big part of littering is the illegal dumping of vehicles as well. So I wanted to mention that.
All right. Thank you so much, Chief.
Just one more question, Chief. Perhaps, your Cape volunteer form, is that possible to place online where, instead of people driving up there, they'd be able to download it, put it and then submit it, or?
Sure. Like I said, it's the standard Government of Guam employment application. And so we can put it on our website, but it's also available in DOA and I think govguamdocs.com, I believe, or org.
Okay, that's great.
But I'll make it available on our website. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
All right. Thank you, Senator Ada. Senator Taitague.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to go next. It was funny, Chief Ignacio, I was going to bring up the abandoned vehicles. I was at the mayor's meeting yesterday, and that was one of the concerns I had and asked Madam Chair that, yes, if we can review this abandoned vehicle issue, because one of the problems too that was shared with me by a mayor the other day, Chief Ignacio, if you can answer to this, when a vehicle is left on the side of the road and GPD comes up toward that vehicle, looks at it, they're able to determine by making a phone call or what, by the license plate. So they have this, they have the means to do so. While mayors don't have that means to actually go on the computer and see who registered this, whose vehicle is this registered. So what happened was the officers came to that vehicle, noticed that it was expired plates, expired everything. So what they did was they took the license plates off the vehicle and they left the vehicle there. So the mayor then called the GPD, I believe it was one of the precincts nearby his village, and asked them, why didn't GPD take the vehicle? Now you have a mechanism to take vehicles, impound vehicles. And the question comes up is, why didn't GPD, because it's expired, the license plate, it's not, why doesn't GPD just impound this vehicle?
So Senator, generally, we take the license plate if the license plate doesn't belong to that car, because then that would constitute a crime, fraudulent use of a license plate. And so therefore, it's the license plate that's illegal on that car and not the car itself. With respect to the car, if the car is not obstructing the roadway, in other words, physically on the travel portion of the roadway, and it's off to the shoulder, off in the grassy area, then we don't impound that car. You got to remember that the Guam Police Department does not have an impound lot, and we do not have the ability to store abandoned vehicles. I'll tell you right now, when I first took over as the chief of police, I had about 67 cars that were impounded for further investigation, mostly related to traffic crashes, the fatalities. And these cars were sitting just near our old evidence section here in Tizen. And, there's a lot of requirements that for an entity to have an impound lot. It goes through a lot of clearances, and the Guam Police Department has never had an legally authorized impound lot. EPA is one of the entities that has to come in and certify that our impound lot does not, impact the aquifer. Or we have where there's no environmental concerns, because these cars, are going to be leaking fluids, radiator fluid, engine oil, gas. And so, they have to be contained in a proper facility. Unfortunately, the Guam Police Department does not have that proper facility. When we impound cars for evidence in traffic fatalities, homicides, or whatever, when we're done with it, we make every effort to release these cars back to the owners, the last known owners. And I'll tell you right now, I paid over $60,000 to clean out that lot and clear it out so that it can return the property to the airport. So it's a challenge because I don't have an impound lot.
Okay, so that's something maybe we can look into later on, because it's obvious you do need one. Glenn, you're about to say, no, I don't think Glenn was going to say anything from EPA, but Glenn, were you trying to say something? You're muted. Glenn from EPA? Yeah, I believe you're muted. Oh, there you go.
Hi, sorry about that.
No problem.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, no, I thought you had a comment that you wanted to make. Sorry. Okay, no worries. But yeah, that definitely is an issue with GPD not being able to have that, because if the officer did take the plates because the plates did not belong to that vehicle, then that's a crime scene itself. And I think that the officers should have impounded that vehicle for further investigation as well. So I'm glad we had the opportunity, because it was just yesterday I was talking to the mayors, and it looks like we're going to move quicker with addressing the concern on abandoned vehicles, because it is an eyesore. And I believe the governor has already mentioned countless times how she's going to help the mayors provide them some funding for beautification for the villages. And one of the biggest eyesores and issues that we have are people having these cars, these abandoned cars, or just vehicles. They're like the backyard mechanics having 10 vehicles on their property. And once they've stripped it of whatever they need, then they call the mayors, expecting the mayors to take these vehicles. I mean, it's almost like they're running a business and then expect their business to be subsidized by the mayors, which is very, it has to be fair on every perspective when it comes to this funding for this. And I'm glad to see that it has been raised. I was one of the authors of the bill to raise the cigarette butt bill to $1,000. And I'm glad to see that the fines are starting to increase. Hopefully this will deter individuals, but one thing I've learned is it's all about enforcement. We have to have teeth to this legislation or these bills that we put out to deter people from littering or doing anything else that harms our environment or the safety of our community. There was a question I have. Chief left, but maybe EPA can answer this. To what extent have security surveillance cameras been used for public areas for littering in prevention? And will any of this funding help with camera surveillances? You know, what would you be looking at using some of this money for that? I'll ask EPA first with regards to the utilization of utilizing cameras.
So we actually have cameras that we utilize in some of our isolated areas. Unfortunately, these isolated areas, they don't, you know, it doesn't come with a power source, so we rely on the battery power. And for about maybe 3 of our cameras that we had, it was actually vandalized and stolen. So we rely on partnerships in some of the areas that are close by to businesses. We rely on residents with, you know, surveillance cameras at their homes to report to Guam EPA. I know Parks and Rec installed camera surveillance on some of the parks that their officers have visibility on. But I think that camera surveillance would be a really good thing. But more importantly, I think that these areas that lead to nowhere, utility easements to nowhere, they just attract a lot of illegal dumping. You know, it's isolated, and really the only people that go in there are the utility guys and illegal dumpers. So maybe controlling those sites would be a very good idea.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Glenn, for that. And Chief Sue, I'm looking forward to, Chief Ignacio, that's way back. I'm looking forward to seeing those cameras that we provided the funding for to be utilized. I know it's not for littering, but I hope those go up too, because it's a great deterrence, Madam Chair. You know, cameras utilizing, I mean, everywhere, people are more conscious of it. And it's the best way to catch individuals, perpetrators from doing, you know, illegal dumping or any other such crimes. So greatly appreciated and for the opportunity, and thank you, and looking forward to talking about abandoned vehicles next. Okay, thank you.
Suzu's Masi, Senator Taitague. So I think I don't have any other colleagues here to ask questions. So seeing that there are no further testimonies or questions, I would just like to say that we will still receive written testimony up until 4 p.m. Thursday, May 13th, 2021. Please address testimony to Senator Sabina Flores Perez, Chairperson of the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor Procurement, Statistics, Research and Planning. It can be dropped off the mailboxes at the Guam Congress building or emailed to office@senatorperez.org. So I'd like to thank everyone who has provided testimony, and I look forward to working further on the bill to incorporate the amendments provided. And to Suzu's Masi for all your cooperation and your support. And so at the time, it's now 12:19 p.m. This committee is now adjourned. Suzu's Masi, and have a great day. Thank you.
Suzu's Masi.